Shopify Theme Development, building a theme from scratch. You guys have been requesting it. Here it is. This is probably going to be a long one, so let's not waste any time and let's jump straight into it. So a little presentation before we get started. This is obviously presented by me, Christopher Dodd. So who am I? I'm a front-end web developer and Shopify expert. Basically been doing Shopify specifically since 2019. I've also been teaching that skill on this channel since 2019. If you scroll back to the oldest videos, you'll see I was teaching Shopify Liquid before anyone else, and also doing that on Skillshare.com, where I have 90,000 plus combined students. And in 2023, I started an online school called Shopify Theme Development.com. Feel free to check it out at any point during this video. I will be mentioning it throughout this video. Okay, so what are we going to cover in today's video? Well, we'll start with our foundation. So because this is build a theme from scratch, we're going to need to at least start with our layout and template files. I'm going to use Liquid templates. Don't freak out. We can actually still use Liquid templates in 2025 and beyond. But then of course we will introduce JSON. I will transform those Liquid templates into JSON templates. We'll look at section schemas, possibly locales, everything to do with JSON, which for those of you who don't know is the simple data storage format within your Shopify theme. Then we will introduce blocks. Blocks are something that have become even more powerful since 2021 when app blocks were released, and then in 2025 when theme blocks were released. So we'll take a look at blocks after we get into the JSON stuff, and then we will look at adding JavaScript functionality to our theme. This is the more complex stuff, the more advanced topic. So I've got some pre-made JavaScript to help us there, but I'm gonna share that with you guys too so that you can plug that into your own theme as well while you're developing a theme. Now, it's important to note that I usually don't build themes from scratch. I'm usually working on existing themes, but you guys requested it. It can give you a sense of how themes are developed from the ground up. And it also might help you to determine whether you're interested in becoming a Shopify dev yourself. So you can see, oh, okay, I can see from the ground up how a theme is built. Is this interesting to me? Maybe you'd like to learn more. A few disclaimers before we get started. I promise this is the last slide. I'll be using a development store, but you can use any store you like. I say this in virtually every video just to make it clear. I generated a development store using my Shopify Partners account, which you can do for free as well if you want to. I've got videos on that within the course if you need to know how to do that. And I'll be using the command line tool Shopify CLI. There is another one called ThemeKit, which is the more old school version. You can use CLI or ThemeKit, it doesn't matter. I'm just used to using CLI because I use it on all my projects now because that is the modern day equivalent of ThemeKit. I'm also going to be using GitHub Copilot to speed up development. This is an AI-assisted coding tool. Makes no sense to not use AI when AI is there and providing good code suggestions. So you'll see throughout this video, I will be taking suggestions from GitHub Copilot and rejecting a lot of suggestions too. Sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it gets it wrong, but when it gets it right, it saves us a lot of time, especially when we don't have exact requirements, which leads me to my next point. I'm a developer, not a designer. So when I typically work with Shopify sellers, if there's a big design requirement, which there usually is if we're building a new page or a new website, then I follow a very specific design, which tools like GitHub Copilot don't help too much with because, you know, if you say build me a cart section, it's going to build you a generic cart section, whereas I need to build a cart section that looks exactly like a design that's been provided to me. As such, given that I'm a developer, not a designer, don't expect the theme to look incredibly good. I'm just going to focus on the functionality in this video. But of course, I'm not going to make it look ugly either, but it's not going to look incredible because that's not my skill set. Following on from that, I'm going to build it as a desktop-only website. Obviously, this is not practical in the real world. We'd have to go in and build our responsive styles and make it work on every screen size, but that is just pure CSS responsive web development. I don't want to get bogged down too much on that because it's not particularly relevant to theme development. I want to focus specifically on the theme itself. And so just to save time, I won't be looking at mobile in this video. And then by the same token, I'm just going to go for a few hours on this. To build a production level theme that you submit to the theme store is probably months of work. So I'm not going to make a 40-hour long video here, just a few hours for you guys. That's the goal. And by the end of it, it should give you a pretty good overview of theme development. I've made sure to plan this so that I touch all the major points. So yeah, the plan is for the video to be a few hours long, not something gigantic like 10 plus hours. So just keep that in mind. To do a real production theme, you would probably need 40 minimum hours plus. And finally, on that topic, this is not a course. I'm not going to be going deep into every little piece of code I write. I'm going to be moving pretty fast, but explaining as I go. If you're interested in learning this skill, of course, I have an online school called Shopify Theme Development.com, which you can access at any point. The link is in the description. All right, so with those out of the way, let's get started building our Shopify theme. First, I'm going to grab some coffee, and then let's dive straight into the computer. All right, so coffee acquired. And right here, you can see I have a project open or a folder open here. It's an empty folder called Shopify Theme from Scratch inside of my code editor, Visual Studio Code, which is what I'm going to be using. It's the same code editor that I use basically for all of my videos. Okay. Then over on Google Chrome, which is the browser I use to view the web and develop, I have my development store. So some of you might remember, if you're OG enough, that I used to have a store called Sexy Shoe Brand. Well, I just copied across the products and called this one Sexy Shoes Brand. And as you can see, as it was created recently, Horizon has been pre-installed. But if I go into my products over here, you can see that I've imported a bunch of shoes. So all of these, apart from these sexy Lemai flats for women, are just the original demo store products that came with Shopify pre-2021. So if we have a look at them, they're pretty basic, just a single product image. I think I loaded that in as an example of a secondary product image. Obviously, a Beatles record cover is not exactly relevant to these shoes. I think that I just put that in there as an example. And obviously, we've got Lorem Ipsum. So this is not real data, but this is the demo data that we're going to be working with. And as you can see, it's a part of the OG Shopify range. So this is the only collection I've created, and it's just got all of those products. And then we've got this one here that stands out because it is our only multi-variant product. So what we're going to do is build variant selection into our theme later. And this is going to be our demo product for that. As you can see, different variants for the same product here. Okay, but all relevant to shoes. The last thing I want to show you with my store setup, if I go into settings and go into brand, I'm not sure where it sits in the menu, but I can just search it here, brand. You can see here that I uploaded this logo for Sexy Shoes. I actually just used ChatGPT to generate this. Obviously, we're working on an example store, so didn't need to go and spend hours trying to create a logo. Just got something simple from AI, and I've uploaded it here to the brand section of our store. In the past, a lot of themes would store the logo for the store in the assets folder, but that doesn't really make sense when you consider that no matter what theme you're on, the logo for the store should be the same. So storing the logo at the theme level, I think makes more sense. And since Shopify brought out this brand settings, that's what I've decided to do. Okay. Now, I know we haven't even touched theme development yet because I'm showing you the setup, but the setup is important of the store because this is the data that's going to be pulling through into our theme. So you can think of a theme as like a skin for your Shopify store. If you don't have anything in your Shopify store, the skin's not going to be able to do much. Okay, so let's actually dive into the code here, and let's start at the very top of the Shopify theme structure. So what sits at the top? It's going to be our layout file. So I'm going to go in here and create a new folder called layout. And then within this folder, I'm going to create a file called theme.liquid. The reason why I've called it theme.liquid is that's the name, the default name. Actually, I'll make this a bit bigger for you guys. Is the default name. So if we have a layout folder here with only one file in it, it will use theme.liquid as our layout file, which typically unless we're coding the password page or some other special set of pages on the store, we typically use the same layout file, okay? So to keep this super simple, all I'm gonna do is give this document a HTML tag, a head tag, and a body tag. So as you can see right here, this is our overall layout, our overall skin. So this is where we're gonna put our head and our body. And then in here, I'm going to put some special tags. Actually, you can see here that AI is suggesting some content. I'm gonna accept some of that soon, but first, what I wanna do is, let me just move this over. First, what I wanna do is add in 2 special liquid tags. So in the head section of your Shopify theme, you're going to want to put in content for header. What this does is allow Shopify to insert its own content into the head section of your Shopify theme. So things like apps, any other operations that Shopify needs in order to work. And then in the body, we have another special tag called content for layout, as you can see here. What content for layout does is render the template file within this body tag, okay? So this is your super simple, super basic layout file. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to need to insert a template within here. So I'm going to open up a folder, templates, and then in here, let's do an index. So index meaning homepage. And I'm just going to have a H1 with hello world, okay? Because we're gonna try and run this ASAP. If we try and run this with Shopify CLI, we will probably get an error because we don't have a config folder. I believe if we use ThemeKit or we just upload it as a zip, we can probably get away with just 2 files here, but Shopify CLI, I'm pretty sure, are not gonna like it. So we just write the command in Shopify CLI, Shopify Theme Dev, and that'll allow us to create a development theme instance on our store. So in the store equals, we just need to copy our store name. Mine is Sexy Shoes Brand, so I'm gonna post that there. Then we just wait a little bit for that to load. Okay, let me expand this out. You'll see there's a warning here. It doesn't seem like you're running this in a theme directory. That's because it's so bare bones that it thinks maybe this is a mistake. But no, we would like to proceed. So let's hit yes, confirm. But we still might get that error that I mentioned before. So this allows us to work on the theme locally. So we can run a development version from this address. We might need to refresh a few times until it's ready. Then it's gonna ask for my store password. I can find that in my preferences of my store in the online store sales channel. So it's obviously Liskai. So I'll put that in here, hit enter. We should only need to do that once. And it seems like we've got not found. So let's see in our console if there's any errors. Okay, because I've already loaded a theme using this command on this store before, I think it's having a little bit of a conflict with the previous theme. Let me just run the command a second time. Yes, we will confirm. Okay, here we go. We've got hello world coming up, and there's actually no error, and I believe that's because it's reading the old settings schema.json file from the previous time I was running Shopify Theme Dev with the file. See that says here settings_schema.json could not be deleted. Obviously it's storing the previous file in memory, so let me close this down and try and show you on, let's try it on a different store. So let's go Sexy Shoe Brand, which is the store that I mentioned earlier that I created years back. Okay, let's hit confirm on that. Okay, let's have a look now. Okay, here we go. Here's the error I was expecting. So, as we can read here, theme cannot be previewed because it's missing one of these required files. So, as you can see here, the first one is layout/theme.liquid. We've got that file right here, so that's not the issue. And we need config/settings_schema.json. So sometimes you can get away with it. With CLI, generally you can't. So what we're going to need to do is add in a config folder with our settings underscore schema.json. Now, what is this file? This file is our JSON schema for the overall theme settings. We're not going to add any settings to it just yet. We're going to get to that on the section on JSON schemas. But just to get this theme to run, we need to add in this object here. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up an array for the settings, and the first object is going to be our theme info object. So this is the object that we need in order to get this theme to run, in order to clear that error. And we just need to call this theme info. So we just need to put theme underscore info inside of the name field. And then again, sorry for these GitHub suggestions. Sometimes they can be real annoying, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for theme name. I believe all of these fields are required. So we can write whatever we want. Theme from scratch here. This one definitely needs to be theme underscore info, but the rest we can put really whatever. And now the suggestions are getting appropriate. So theme author, Christopher Dodd, or whatever your name is. Theme version, theme description, a custom theme built from scratch for Shopify, perfect. And then this suggestion is not correct. What we need here is a theme underscore documentation URL and a theme support URL. Okay, so as you can see, sometimes it gets it right, sometimes it doesn't. So in here, I'm just going to put the typical way to get around this, because these are required fields, is to just put in the documentation URL from Shopify or the Shopify GitHub repo for CLI, which is what I'll do there. And then for theme support URL, same URL with /issues on the end. And if I hit save on that, and let's try and run this again, that object in that array should be enough. So let's just say yes. All right. Theme description is not a valid attribute. Okay, so GitHub Copilot has fooled us with that. That's the downside of AI suggestions sometimes. Sometimes they suggest you the wrong thing. So let me start that again. This might sound a little cumbersome and annoying, but you typically only have to do this once when you're building from scratch. This is not an issue on actual themes that have all this already set up. So here you can see we are now able to run our theme, and we have the words hello world coming through. So we've got our object here in our section schema. Just to get past that error, we've got our layout file, which determines the overall layout around what's in our template file. And then we've got our template file, which inserts into the content for layout right here. And just to show you what comes through in content for header, there's actually usually quite a lot. So if we inspect the code here in the theme.liquid layout file, and if I go into here, inside of head, you can see there's a ton of stuff that Shopify injects. Actually, we're on CLI, so it probably injects more stuff than once the theme is actually on the Shopify store. But as you can see, content for header can insert a lot of code. And then inside body here, you can see this right here is Shopify CLI. Don't worry about that. But essentially, outside of that, if we were to put our theme live, or at least on this store, then it would just be the H1 with hello world. Okay, so there you have it. We have our super bare bones theme from scratch, and obviously it's not functional yet. So let's actually build our foundation here. The home page, which is what we're seeing here, is usually a set of sections stacked on top of each other. Maybe it's a banner followed by a featured collection, followed by whatever the seller wants to feature, right? So it's quite variable, and we'll get to that in just a sec. What I want to start with is on the product template. Okay, so index is pretty simple. If we're on the root domain of our website, we're going to load the index template. But it works a little differently for templates that support specific resources, like for instance, the all-important product object. Okay, so in order to create a template for showing the product object, I'm going to create a file called product.liquid. Now these notifications are getting really annoying here. I'm not sure exactly how to turn them off. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to disable that extension. So as you can see here, I've got the Shopify Liquid extension here, which provides code suggestions and has something called theme check, which will show up errors and suggestions while you're developing. But right now that notification isn't too helpful. So I'm just going to disable it and hit restart extensions just so we can clear that annoying error message down there. And then in here within our product.liquid, I'm going to, for the first time in this video, ask GitHub Copilot to generate me some code. So I'm going to say to Copilot here running GPT 4.1, I've been told that maybe it's not the best model to use in order to generate code by some other people. Everyone's got a different opinion on this, but for me it works fine. So I'm going to say create me an e-commerce product page with the image on the left hand side and the product details on the right hand side. Be sure to include the product title and price and an add to cart button. And something that it's been doing when I've been asking it to do this is putting the styles in the style attribute of the different HTML elements. So I'm going to right here make sure to separate the CSS into style tags, and I'm going to say use placeholder content so that I can show you how to insert the content from Shopify Liquid. Use placeholder content for, yeah, I'll just say use placeholder content. Let's see what happens. All right, here we go. So we've got some descriptive class names and hopefully it generates some nice CSS for that. Okay, looks good. I'm not going to look too deeply into that. I'm just going to accept that code and hit save on that. Now, in order to view this page, we're going to need to look at our product template via a product URL. Now, in order to get that error before, I believe I connected to the old brand. So we're not actually connected to this store right now. So let's change that. I'm going to, let me just clear the console, and then I'm going to connect to the actual store, Sexy Shoes brand. Again, it's saying that the theme is so bare bones that it doesn't even know if it is a real theme. So yes, we're going to select confirm. Okay. And then we're going to just check everything's still working over here. Yep, we're still able to load the index template. And now we just need to find a product in our store. So we're going to go over here to products. And let's look at awesome sneakers. I don't want to do the one with variants just yet, but any product that's a single variant product, let's work with that. And as you can see, the URL structure, it's got arrows here, but it's actually supposed to be slashes here. And this structure is the same on all Shopify sites. So you can tell if a site is a Shopify site actually from this. You can see I work with a lot of products on here. So we're going to write products. And then the final part of this is called a product handle. If you didn't already realize, it's the unique identifier that also goes in the URL. So it's awesome-sneakers. So we're going to go awesome-sneakers, and that'll take us to the product page of awesome-sneakers. But right now we're not using any Shopify Liquid, which means we're going to be rendering the same content no matter if we're on awesome sneakers or if I look at another product. I believe this one has the handle of cool-kicks. So if I was to replace that handle here with cool-kicks, we're going to get the same content. Obviously, we don't want that, so we're going to be replacing all of our placeholder content with content from the actual product using Shopify Liquid. Okay. Also, the product image here is broken. Not sure how GitHub Copilot messed that up, but the URL to this placeholder image API obviously must be wrong. But that's okay. We're going to replace this all with Shopify Liquid. So I'm going to start with the simpler example first. Let's change our product title here. And in Shopify Liquid, when we're outputting a value straight to the template, we use the double set of curly brackets. So here I'm going to look up on the product object the title. Okay. Now, again, this is not a course on Shopify Liquid. You can see here that we now have the title of the actual product that we're looking at coming through. But if you're wondering how this works, we can actually see that within the Shopify documentation for Liquid, there are a range of different objects here And within all these objects, they have different attributes. So when we're in the product template, we have access to the product object. And the product object within this template is relative to the product that we're looking at, which is determined by the URL. So if I change this to Cool Kicks, you'll now see, because there's a different product object, we're using the same code, but the actual product that's represented by this object here is changing. Okay, so in order to see what other attributes we have available to us in this template on this object, you can read the documentation here. I go a lot deeper and slower on this inside the Shopify Liquid course on shopifythemedeveloper.com. But if we look it up, we can see here that title on the product object is a string that outputs the title of the product. Pretty self-explanatory, but that principle applies to all of the attributes on any object within our Shopify theme. Okay, so then we're going to want to replace the price, and here we're going to see our first Shopify Liquid filter. So first of all, I'll just put product price here to start with and see how that manifests on the front end. Okay, so a bit of a weird price here. It's obviously not worth $12,000. And it doesn't even have a currency symbol here. So is this $12,000 or is this 12,000 euros? We don't know. Well, the reason why it shows up like this is because this is a better format for doing math. So if we wanted to, and this is a filter here, if we write a pipe and then a keyword, we can, times this by 2, and we can easily do math on prices that come through in this format. But in this case, what we want to do is have it show up in a human readable format. And so we can just use the money filter here, as you can see via the suggestions, even with the Shopify Liquid or whatever it's called, the Shopify Liquid extension off, the suggestions are still coming through, thankfully, which is nice. But here you can see, so how did I get that before? Here we go. So we have money, money with currency, money without currency, money without trailing zeros. So we have a few different options, but we can just use money here. So we're now putting this output through this filter and we get the nice human readable price. Okay, we've got this placeholder for the description. Well, there's actually a field on the product object for description. So I'm going to put that in here. Product description. We don't need to filter that through anything. We can just leave that like that. And you can see here the lorem ipsum from the product is now coming through, as you can see here. And then the final two things here are the image and the add to cart button. So as you can see here, we are linking to this image here. And in order to get the image from Shopify, we can write product.featuredImage. That'll give us the image object, but it doesn't actually give us the fully formed SRC. So if we just write this, we're gonna still get a broken link. If I inspect this, you'll see that it links to this address, which is not an address that we can access the image through. So we need to modify this output with a filter in order to get the actual image URL. And as you can see from the suggestions here, we use the image URL filter and we specify a width. This is a cool feature within Shopify where we can take an image that was uploaded at a much higher resolution and decrease its width in different parts of the store, which means that we don't have to worry so much if the theme is written correctly that merchants have uploaded too big of a file. All right, quick sip of the coffee. And let's make this, let's say 400, okay? Now, if we refresh over here, you'll see that we get that product image coming through. And if I open it up in a new tab, you can see that it comes through with the width of 400. And this API we can work with through the URL. So I can actually change this to 800 and it comes back double the size. So that's something cool to note. Within Shopify, we can just change the URL and get the image coming back to us at various different widths and heights. Now, generally, we like to make the served image size double the amount that it's actually showing at. So here you can see it's coming across 400 pixels wide. So I'm going to make this 800, and that'll make the image look sharp enough without making it too big. Okay? The final thing, and something that's important to note about Shopify, when you're adding a product to the cart in Shopify, you're not actually adding a product, you're adding a variant. I explained this in the Shopify platform module at shopifythemedeveloper.com in a little bit more detail. But essentially, as we saw with the example of the sexy shoes lemai or lemai flats here, we've got different variants, right? So each of these is a different product that we're going to ship to the customer, right? If the customer orders green shoes and is given blue shoes, then that's a different product. It's a different physical object in our warehouse to the green shoe, right? So because of that, we always add a variant to the cart, not a product, because a product could have multiple variants. In the case of a product that doesn't have any variants, there is still one variant, and it's called the default variant. So even though if we look right here in our product, there is no variance, there is a default variant, okay? And secondly, when we do have a multiple variant product, we can actually select which variant we want on page load via the URL. So we could say variant equals, and then we can put in the variant ID, which is a number that identifies the variant. Sorry if I'm explaining too much here. There's obviously a lot that goes into theme development. I obviously go a lot more in detail on shopifythemedeveloper.com. Obviously a lot of parts to this, but getting back to this actual theme build, we need to send through a variant ID in this hidden field here so that Shopify knows what product to add to the cart. Okay, so within this value field, what I can do is I can grab a variant off the product object. This is going to work whether it has multiple variants or not. There's one called selected or first available variant, and then that's going to give us a variant object. We need to look at the actual ID of that object. So what this is going to do for single variant products is it's just going to give us the ID of the default variant. But on multiple variant products, it's going to give us the variant that is selected via the URL, as I showed you before with that URL on page load, or the first available variant. Okay, so here if I refresh, let's inspect that button, or just above it, you can see that we've got the value of the variant. We can't easily check that here in our admin. There's actually a hack to view the product information as JSON. Probably going into too much detail here, but you can see here that we have the default variant. It always has the title of default title. This color scheme is not ideal for viewing. Sorry about that. But if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see we've got a variance array. There's only one, and the ID is matching right here. Okay, so that's a little hack if you ever wanted to see all the data for your particular product. Okay. But now if I go back and I refactor this a little bit, there's actually some Shopify liquid we can use here to generate us the right form tag. I'm not sure if this is correct, but within Shopify liquid, we can use the form tag itself, and we just need to pass through the product as a parameter, and then we need to replace this with the closing end form tag here. As you can see here, this is the first time we've inserted a liquid tag that isn't the double set of curly brackets, because this is not a tag that's responsible just for output. I guess you could say in this instance it does output some code, but for these special theme tags, we need to use the curly bracket and %sign syntax. Okay, so here you can see we've got a form here. It had the same action, so GitHub Copilot did get the action correct, but we've got some other information here that gets inserted, some other hidden fields. So that should be all that we need in order to add this product to the cart. But if I click add to cart here, you're gonna see we go to the cart page, which is a good sign, means that we probably did add the product to the cart, but we are getting a 404 error because we don't have a cart page, okay? Or rather, I should say we don't have a template for the cart page. So let's do that next. Let's go over here to our templates, and I'm not going to spend too long on this because we're going to build a side cart. Having a separate page for the cart is pretty archaic these days with Shopify theme development, but it's a good idea to have it just in case maybe someone doesn't have JavaScript in their browser. Maybe there's a JavaScript error and you don't want to stop people from reaching their cart. So it's a good idea to have a cart template within your theme, but most of the time people are going to be using a interactive side cart that probably comes out as a drawer from the side of the screen, which is what we're going to build later into this theme. But yeah, good to have a cart template as a backup as well. So again, we don't have a specific design requirement for this, so we can easily just ask ChatGPT to create some HTML and CSS for us via GitHub Copilot. And seeming I've already showed you how to insert liquid variables into a template, I'm going to let Copilot add in the liquid this time. So I'm going to say, create me a cart page here, use the cart object in liquid to clearly show all the products in the user's cart. Please make it look nice and have a checkout button. All right, let's see what it does with this prompt. I'm not the best with prompts. I'm sure I could write better prompts, but we should be able to get something pretty good from this prompt. Again, it's doing that thing where it's inserting the CSS directly in the style attribute. So I'll follow up with a prompt to say, please use CSS classes, not inline styles. You can put these in a style tag at the top of the document. All right. Yeah, there you go. So it's creating the CSS, putting that within style tags at the top of the document, and then it's got our HTML here with the necessary liquid as well. Okay. So if we scroll down and see here, actually let's view it on the front end and then we'll break down the code. So let me click add to cart again. Now, when we do this, we should expect to see 2 of this product in the cart, because remember, I already added it to the cart before, we just couldn't see it. So if I click add to cart again, you'll see here, wow, this is actually better than I expected. This is pretty good cart. So here you can see we've got the default title, which is the variant title that comes through for a default variant. We don't want to show that, so we'd obviously want to take that out, but you can see here the price of each product, the quantity, and this is all coming through from the cart object. And then within the cart object, we have cart items. So all this data is coming through from the line item object. I'm not sure if these actually work. Now we'll have to program in with JavaScript, which we're going to do later when we do the side cart. So let's have a look at the code it generates. So there's a property on the cart object called item count that tells us how many items are in the cart. If the answer is 0, then we want to show this message here, your cart is currently empty. Otherwise, we want to create this cart table. It's wrapped in a form action. I see. So we can actually, without JavaScript, edit our cart through native liquid. So I believe if we click remove here, it's actually going to work. And now you can see when we refresh our cart, it's currently empty. So it meets that condition up here. This is a pretty good suggestion from GitHub Copilot. I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, given this is the code a theme from scratch video, we maybe would have wanted to write this code ourselves. But we're moving to that stage now with web development and coding in general, where as long as you understand the output code that comes through from the AI model, then you're gonna want to use AI when it's appropriate. The tricky thing here for you guys, if you're just learning, is you need to actually learn how to code Shopify themes before using AI. So if I was coding a theme from scratch, this is how I would do it. I'd be using AI for sure. But for you, if you don't understand any of this, definitely, there are other videos on this channel that go into more detail about the various parts of theme development. And of course, Shopify Theme Development.com is your home for education on this subject. Just wanted to say that right here. Obviously, if I wrote all of this out with a CSS, that'd be like probably a half an hour video in and of itself. We're going to get into, like I said before, building our own cart using JavaScript, because that's a bit more of a modern feature. But for something like the cart template that we're not going to really see once we build that, I'm happy to let AI generate that for me. So let's go back to Awesome Sneakers and add that to the cart again. What that's going to do is send a request to the back end of Shopify, add that variant to the cart, and now we can see our cart here. I'm just going to remove some stuff here, or just adapt this a little bit. Obviously, I don't want default title to come through. So where is the variant title coming through? As you can see here. So let me just write some code here to say if, and as you can see here, our first if statement. Anytime we're writing an if statement, we're going to use the curly bracket with percentage sign syntax. So I'm going to do this like that, and if, and we're just going to make sure that item variant title is not. We can also use unless for this, or we can do if not, and then say default title. Cool. All right. We also don't want to pretend here that you can update your quantity without building in that functionality. As you can see here, if I click this up and down, actually there is this update cart button here, but I don't think that's clear enough. So let me just, where it says the quantity, item dot quantity, I'm going to, instead of making that an input, just make that a simple piece of text. Item quantity. There we go. And then I'll remove that update cart button. All right, I'll just comment that out. There we go. So the remove button is going to work because it sends the variant ID or the line ID. Let's have a look here. It sends whatever information it needs to the back end to remove that product from the cart. And then we have our checkout button here, which is pretty simple. I think the AI has coded this wrong. Doesn't have a href. So the checkout URL is very easy. It's just checkout on Shopify. All right, so if I click on this now, it'll take me to checkout. And as you can see here, if I go into order summary, actually I just moved my screen over here, you can see that our cart makes it through to checkout, and this is where the customer pays for their order and yeah, puts in their delivery information and gets their product. Cool. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to spend any longer on this page because we're going to build an interactive JavaScript cart. So what I'm going to do now is let's head back to our product page or any page on our store and code up something that's definitely missing from our store, which is the header. I think I had it planned to do this before the product template, but when you're building from scratch, there's so many different parts and you can do them in whatever order really when you're starting from this level of scratch. And for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a section. So I'm going to create a section. I'm going to hard code the section into this layout file. And then later on, we're going to be using sections more dynamically. So in order to create a section, I'm going to need to create a sections folder. And then in here, I'm going to create the header section. Cool. Now I'm going to, once again, use ChatGPT or GitHub Copilot to generate me a header. Write me a nice e-commerce store header using the logo in the brand object. And what else? Let's just write that. And then just make sure it doesn't do what it's doing before where it puts the CSS in line. Don't put the CSS in line. Make sure to use CSS classes and a style sheet within the same file. Cool, so it made sure to create style tags and put the CSS in there rather than doing inline, which is great. I'll make sure to remind it to do that in future. Even puts in a nice little liquid comment here. So now that we have this header, we just need to bring it into our layout file. The reason why we're bringing it into our layout file is because we want the header to show up on every page. So I'm going to put it above the content for layout, which is our little gateway for the template content to come through. And I'm going to write a tag that we don't really see anymore because of JSON templates, but we're going to remove it later anyway. Section header. This just simply brings in the code from the header section into wherever we place it. Okay, so now if If I go over here, you'll see we've got this nice header. It's actually not that nice. I wonder if we can ask ChatGPT to make it nicer. Can you make it look nicer, please? The font looks old school. I wonder if that'll work. Okay, it's bringing in a font from Google. Let's see. Okay. Accept. Let's have a look. Okay, that's a bit nicer. There you go. All right, I like that. The only problem is it didn't do the logo properly. It seems to struggle with images. So here we go, brand.logo. That does seem to be the right one. Let me have a look at the code for our header right here. Inside our ahref. I just realized that the brand object is on the shop object. So we need to make sure that every mention to the brand object is coming through from the parent object of shop. Okay, let me go back to here. Now you can see the logo is coming through and we got this pretty nice little header. It's not particularly functional. Let's fix some of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to a collection that we have in our store. So we can go up here, collections, but actually instead of hard coding in our links up here, I want to allow our merchant to be able to edit that within the navigation section of their website. So here's something also within Shopify that's important. It used to be in this menu here of online store, but now it's in content. We have something called menus, okay? So here you can see we get a main menu by default. This is what GitHub Copilot should have used, but did not. But that's all right. They've done a pretty good job regardless. And so let me code that in instead. Actually, let me ask ChatGPT to fix this. Please use the main menu, I think is the handle of it. Yeah, you can see the handle right here. Main menu link lists is the actual technical name for this object here, rather than, yeah, maybe I'll just say that instead. Let's see if GitHub Copilot can figure that out. And looks like it has. So there you go. So instead of putting through those specific 3 links, what it's done is it's looping through the links on the main menu link list. And then on each of these link objects, we have access to the URL and the title. So let's see now if we look back over here, we still have home, catalog, contact, but it's coming through from this link list. And if I was to move catalog to the end and hit save, we're going to get that reflected in our theme as well. So like I mentioned before I switched over to this link list here, or this menu as it's called in the admin, I'm going to link to a collection within our store. So I'm going to say shop OG collection. And then for the link here, I'm going to click on the only collection on our store, OG Shopify range. And here I have the optional field to add a filter to that as well based on tags. I'm not going to do that. And then here, I'm not going to do a contact page. I'm going to do an about page. And do we already have one preloaded? Yes. Actually, I created one when I was preparing for this video. Let me show you that real quick. So if I go into my online store sales channel right here, down to pages underneath themes. Also guys, if you're watching this video well into the future and the UI has changed, don't freak out. Shopify changes their UI all the time. Shouldn't be too hard to adapt. I'm going to click on the About Us page, and here you can see we have a page in Shopify, which if you guys are familiar with how Shopify works, a page is a very simple object in Shopify. The only editable information we have for a page really is the title, the content, and of course the handle and SEO information if we wanted to change that as well. If we want to create a special page which is customizable in this online store editor, we go down to here and we can create alternative templates as well. Might do that a little later if we have time. But now if I go over to here, refresh, you'll see home, takes us to the home page right there, and you can see our home page has the header as well. Or we can click here to go to the collection page for that. It's going to show up for 404 because we haven't built that yet. And if we go to the About Us page, it's also going to come up with a 404 page because we haven't built the template. So let's build the template for those 2 pages.
Before we do that, I want to have an overall container class for the CSS. As you can see here, if I make my screen much wider, this header is just too long. So I'm going to implement a container here. So first I'm going to do it in the header. Actually, it's going to require some CSS change. So let me ask ChatGPT to do it. So can you nest a container within the header? I want the max width of the container to be, let's go with 1200 pixels. It seems to be struggling with this a little bit maybe. Oh no, it just needs to refactor a few things. I'll hit accept. If we refresh over here, don't see any, oh, I forgot to hit save. Okay, here you can see that we now have a container. So if my screen size is less than 1200, it's fine. And then if my screen size is bigger than 1200 pixels wide, you can see that it's wrapped in a nice container. And I want to be able to use that container site-wide. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file for theme CSS and also a new folder to house this file. So for our assets, including CSS, JavaScript, images, icons, we're going to need an assets folder. And within my assets folder, I'm going to create a, you can call it whatever you want. I like to call mine theme.css. This is going to be our overall CSS for the theme. And then within our head, we are going to link that as well. As you can see here, the suggestion has been pretty good from GitHub Copilot. So I'll add that in. And also while I'm here, I forgot to add in this important tag, the title tag. So right now our page doesn't have any title. So we can use the special object right here to insert the appropriate title within the title tag. And you can see here, I mean, right now it doesn't look too good, but if we go to, better probably not to go to a page that doesn't exist yet. Let's go to the Awesome Sneakers product page. You can see here that the title in our browser changes to the name of the product. All right, so as you can see here, the product is not going too far across. Let's move our styles first, and then we can possibly ask ChatGPT to refactor that for us. So I'm going to go over to our container style right here, remove that from header, and put it in our theme.css so that we can use it wherever. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my product template. Please use a container element for containing this product page. The class is, and I'll put the dot there so that it knows that it's a container. Okay. We put the container above the product page, which usually I want it the other way around. Hit save on that. Yeah, it sort of contains the whole product page, and the product page is still sort of restricted, as you can see here, max width. So maybe I just remove, if I go down, product. We are going to be still following the structure that I laid out at the start of the video. So we're currently at stage 1 here, laying out our foundation, our layout, and our templates, but we'll get to the JSON templates soon. Okay, so, I mean, this could look a little nicer, but let's not get too caught up on that. What I want to do is I want to create templates for our missing pages. If I click this, it'll take us to the cart page. That's nice. If I click this, we do not have, oh, actually we do, but it's on the new system. So that's cool. Let me just leave that. I'm not going to deal with that in this video, because in case you guys did not hear, the account section is no longer part of the theme. Let me wrap the content for, actually I won't bother yet because we're going to completely replace this. I'm actually just going to remove hello world completely. And then let's build these templates for the collection. So I'm going to create a new file in here called collection.liquid, and then I'll do the page after that. So right here, I will again ask ChatGPT to, oh, I wrote ask, generate me a collection page. Pretty simple, just the title of the collection, followed by a 3-column grid showcasing the products in that collection. All right, let's see how this does. Talking so much in this video, I'm losing my voice a little bit, so apologies for that. I've never done a video this long before. Okay. All right, again, it's done that thing where it's put the CSS in line. We don't want that. And also it's not using the container. Okay, please use a container with the class of container and no inline styles. Put the CSS above the HTML code. Also, I should note here that I could also put all the CSS in theme.css. There are so many different ways that you could code up your theme. Actually, before Dawn, all of the CSS for the theme, I believe, went in a centralized CSS theme. And then Dawn introduced all these component CSS files, which got brought in section by section. And then interestingly, in Horizon, which is the third theme that I've seen Shopify bring out in my career as a Shopify theme developer, it uses these style sheet and style sheet tags within the section files. So Shopify have obviously done it 3 different ways over the years, and other theme developers have done it however they want. So yeah, we could have all this code in the theme.css file, or we could have it in the template or in the section file. Once we get to swapping this all to JSON templates, I'm going to actually refactor this to do it the Horizon way. But we'll get to that in just a bit. Let me see if this works. So if I go to Shopify OG collection, okay, this is a bit messed up. Why is it having the title to the left? That is a bit strange. I guess because container has flex. I thought ChatGPT would be smarter than that. Let me see. I want the container to constrict page width. I feel like I'm vibe coding right now. I never write this many prompts when I'm developing because I'm always developing to a very specific design usually, or requirement, and I'm working with existing theme code. But when you're building from scratch, these AI tools definitely help a lot to cut down on time. So I want the container to constrict page width, but I still want the collection title to show above the products grid. And then what else? Let's just say that. See what it comes up with. Again, it's using these style attributes. What the hell? No inline styles, please. CSS only within the style tags at the top. Okay, let's see. Okay, that's a little bit better. I did think that the AI would do a better job of making the product grid items look better, but at least it's doing this within a nice container now. Ideally, I'd want the container around the title as well, and we don't really need to use the class name twice. Yeah, maybe I refactor this. Stop using AI and just use my own brain for once. Okay, here we go. That's gonna put it down there, I guess, because it's in this container. Okay, let's just leave it like this for now. And then, yeah, the product grid item's not looking too good. So the product grid item doesn't look so good. Please remove the A tag text styling for one, and have some shadow on the card and a nice hover effect. Let's go with that. I'll accept all of that code. Okay, here we go. So this is a bit nicer. I'm happy with that. I think that's good enough for now. Maybe some extra margin below this, but that's all good. Now, it's already inserted a link with the product URL. So if we just have a look at the liquid here, we're looping through all the products on the products array within the collection object. and we're creating a product grid item element for each of these with a link to that product. So you can see here on the product object, we've got URL, and so that's going to link to that product page, which we already created. So if I click on Insane Shoes, it's going to take me to Insane Shoes. So now you can see our theme is starting to look a little bit more real. So yeah, any of these we can click on, and now we get to the same product template for each product page, but different information because we're pulling through from Liquid, obviously. Okay, so let me go to About. We haven't created our page yet for that, or our template yet for that, I should say. So let me go down to here, and now that we're adding in more stuff into our code, I might zoom out. Sorry guys if that's a little bit too zoomed out, but there's going to be a lot of stuff. We're only just getting started here, guys, so yeah, strap yourselves in. All right, so write me a basic page template for Shopify. I wonder if it knows what to do if I write that. Okay, we don't need to specify layout theme because that's the default. And yeah, it's given us a really basic template. Like I said, there's only two really editable fields on the page object, which is the title and the content. So this is not going to be too bad, but as you can see here, it's not in our container for one. So we need to, let's wrap this in our container. It's good to have a consistent container across the site because then everything lines up. So now you'll see that when we're on those larger screen sizes, we can see that the logo lines up on the left-hand side. The end of the paragraph lines up on the right-hand side. Let me have a look at this on a smaller screen size. Okay, this is not lining up perfectly, you can see here, but it is lining up with that left edge of the header, which if you can see there's a slight edge around it. So I'm okay with that, although I think I want a bit more padding on my container. So what's the padding currently? Well, it doesn't look like there's any padding. Okay, so the space we're getting is just that default margin on the body. Usually it's a good idea to remove this, so I'm going to go up here, body margin 0. And then here I'm going to put in some padding on the left and right. So 0, 20 pixels. And now you can see we got some nice padding, but it's overflowing on the page. So I'm going to, up here, use the universal selector to change box sizing to border box, which will fix that for us. Okay, so now we have our About Us page. If we create another page, it's going to use the same template. It's going to have the title up here and then the content underneath it. We've now got our OG collection, which I can go in, I can add a product to the cart. We can remove an item from the cart. We can click, we're already in the cart, but if I was on another page, we can click on this menu item to go to that item in the cart. We have our account section here, which used to be managed by the theme, but now that's called legacy customer accounts. So that's gonna direct us somewhere else. And if I select, we're caught in an infinite loop now. If I just refresh on the root domain, I'm not sure why it's having issues. Let me reopen that tab. And now we've just got our homepage to code up. Now, like I said before, the index template or the home page has always been a reorderable list of sections as long as I've been a developer on Shopify. So this is since 2019. You've always been able to add a list of sections to the home page and rearrange them. That all changed in 2021 when JSON templates came out and you were able to do that on every single page with JSON templates. But just to give you a tiny history lesson, apparently this is not deprecated, but I don't think it's going to work. We can actually write the special tag content for index here. And this is the old school code that allowed us to basically put a list of sections within our index template. Let's actually open this up. Like I said, I don't think this works anymore, but let's have a first look at our online store editor. We haven't even touched this yet because we haven't done anything with JSON yet, but we're getting very close. Just want to mention this before we move on to JSON templates. You can see here on our homepage template, we've got the header section. It doesn't have any settings, so it's just basically a snippet of code right here. If we go into our theme settings right here, they are empty because we haven't set any of those up in our theme as well. And if we go to any other page on our store, or any other template I should say, you can see it's just the header section because that's literally the only section we have on our theme. Now, like I said, in the past, we were able to bring in different sections via content for index. Perhaps the list is not there because I haven't put in a schema with a preset, but that being said, it's something we don't use anymore, this content for index tag, because we now use JSON templates. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to move over to the next section of this building a theme from scratch video, which is JSON. So I'm going to take a quick break, go to the bathroom, and let's refactor this Shopify theme to use JSON. All right, so let's talk about JSON. JSON is a simple data storage format that we can use throughout our Shopify theme. We actually have already seen it with the settings_schema.json file to store our theme information. We're going to be adding some settings to this file right here. We also want to be creating a settings_data.json file. Maybe I just do that now. So settings_data.json. And what this file does is actually store the data that the settings that we set up here create. I believe we just open this up and say, I think it's array current, and then an empty object is like the basic setup. Sorry, it's not an array, it's an object within an object, right? Here's some sort of boilerplate for our settings_data JSON. And so for these JSON files where we're storing data, we can either edit them directly. Otherwise, Shopify, when we're using the online store editor, are going to insert values into this. And so anytime we're using the online store editor, which we'll see a little bit later, we're going to actually create some settings within our theme to actually edit and move around here. Anytime we create a change here, all of that information will be stored in JSON. If it's on the theme settings, it'll be stored here, but otherwise it'll be stored on what's known as JSON templates or section groups as well. Speaking of section groups, let's do a section group right now, and then I'll do the JSON templates. So within our sections folder here, this actually came out a little later after JSON templates were released. I have a video on this YouTube channel about it if you want to look at it more, but Shopify gave us something called section groups. Okay, so I'm going to actually start with a section group. So we can put into our sections folder here something called header group, and we're going to use JSON instead of liquid here. I believe this is the exact same system as JSON templates. We're going to need to open up an object here, and you can see we get some good suggestions from GitHub Copilot, others that aren't so great. We do need a name, and we do want it to be called header group, but we also, with a section group, we want a type here, and it's going to say header group, but it's just supposed to be header. As you can see here, that removes the yellow squiggly line. And then we're going to have a sections object and a order array right here. Okay, so this is the same structure that we're going to have for our JSON templates as well, I believe without the type. And then so in here, inside of our sections, we're going to write, and you can see here, GitHub Copilot is kind of right. We're going to open up an object with the key of header, but we can make this key whatever we like actually. The field that we have to really make sure is matching to our header file is right here in the type. In our type field here, we need to make sure that it's related to an actual file name in our sections folder without the .liquid. So here you can see header.liquid. We need to make sure that this says type header. And then this won't allow us to save without putting this into the order array. Any section we put in this sections object needs to be in the order array. Doesn't really make sense now because there's only one section, but if there are multiple, this order array is what tells Shopify what order to put them in. Now that we've created this header group, which links to our header, we just need to replace our hard-coded section reference in our template. And the way we do that is just change it from section to sections, and then we put in header group. All right. If we look back at our theme right now, not in the editor, but our actually output theme, this changes nothing. So what have we done? Why have we done this? Is it pointless? No, because what this means now, if we open up our online store editor for our theme, is you can see here that header is now within a header group, and there's this button here to add a section. Okay, now we've already added in the full list of our sections, which is only one currently, which is the header section. But now you can see we do have the ability to add in other sections. So what I'm going to do to demonstrate this is to create a new section. I'm going to call it announcement bar, and I think from the name you can kind of guess what we're going to do here. Announcement bar.liquid. And I'm going to, again, ask Copilot to generate me some code. Create me a basic announcement bar. And what I like to do, I find that Copilot is quite good at generating JSON schemas. So I'm going to specify what settings I want, and I expect Copilot to do a good job of creating the JSON schema for me. Okay, so create me a basic announcement bar to go above. Actually, it doesn't really matter where it's going to go because I'm going to do that myself. Create a basic announcement bar. I want settings to control the background color, the text color. Sorry for my British spelling here for all the Americans. And the text. Okay. So I'm going to hit enter on that, and unlike the previous times, it's going to generate me some HTML, CSS, but it's also going to generate me a JSON schema. Okay, so I like to have my schemas at the end, so I'm going to move that. In fact, I've never seen a production level theme where the schema is at the start. So it's just always at the end for some reason, but AI likes to put it at the start. And as you can see here, there's a few things going on. So let's have a look at the schema first. Within a section schema, we open it up with schema tags. So schema and schema, and then we put a JSON object within it. Okay, we're going to need to name our section, announcement bar, and then we put in an array in this settings field for the different settings. Okay, if you want to know what settings are available and how to use them, you can find the full list on Shopify's own documentation. Input settings right here, you can see it describes what are the attributes that go into the object and then the different types with examples for each. Okay, so there's the reference for that. If we go back to our schema right here, it shouldn't be too hard to understand. The first one is type of text, which is basically a single line text field. The next one is color, which has an inbuilt color picker, so we can choose the color. And then the third one is also color. The ID here is what allows us to target that value in our Liquid code. The label is what shows up to the admin user in the online store editor. And then default is the default value that we're going to be putting in there when we load this section. Okay, so with that in mind, let's have a look at the announcement bar code that has been generated for us. As you can see up here, we have style tags right here, but I'm okay with it because we are inserting dynamic values. As we saw before with Liquid, if we go to the product page or the product template, we were pulling information off the product object. Okay, this represents information within our store, but we can also pull off information from the section object. The section object represents the section that we're currently in. Obviously, you can't use this section object outside of a section, but from within a section, we can then access the settings object from the section object, and then we can access the value of the particular setting via its ID. Remember I said before that we have background color as the ID here? Well, we can access the value of that set in the customizer. I call it the customizer. I think it used to be called that, but it's now online store editor right here. Okay, then we have color, and then I don't particularly like this, but I'll leave that for now. And then the text itself is right here. We just output that straight between these two div tags. Okay, now the problem with this is if I go into the customizer here, I keep calling it customizer because I think they the button to get into it is called Customize as well. I think it's better named Customizer than Online Store Editor. Anyway, I believe it's called Online Store Editor is its technical term. So if I click Add Section right here, you'll see that we still can't add the section. Why is that? Well, we actually need to add a preset to the presets array. This is kind of annoying, but with AI, it makes it pretty easy just to insert that right now. As I said, Copilot is very good with JSON schemas, so it rarely gets it wrong. And as you can see here, we have name default. We just need to change that to announcement bar. And then it also gives us the opportunity to add a category so that we can easily find it. We can group together these sections. Now, if I refresh in my online store editor and I click add section, you can see that announcement bar is a section that's available. And we actually get a nice little preview of what it's going to look like with the default values. If we don't have defaults or we set them within the preset itself, we won't get this nice little preview. Okay, so if I click announcement bar, it's going to add it in. And as you can see, it adds it in after the header. I can click and drag. Actually, let me zoom in a bit here. I can click and drag this right here to reorder this, and then it goes above the header. Now on the right hand side too, you can see that we have some editable sections. So I can change the background color to, let's say, red, for instance, and that comes through based on what we've set up in our liquid. Okay, so if I change that back to black and I say, yeah, welcome to sexy shoes. Woo! Okay, cool. All right, hit save on that, and that data then gets saved. Now, here's a little gotcha. So if I go back over to my header group right here, you'll see that that data doesn't appear to be stored within my theme. This is a bit of an issue with Shopify CLI. It doesn't bring in changes from your online store editor into the actual project. If I change a piece of code here, that's going to be represented over here, but not the other way around. If I use the online store editor using CLI, then that data is not going to be brought across. So what we need to do in this case, we need to click edit code, and we actually do have access to edit the code on our Shopify store. And if we have a look at header group, you can see that Shopify has actually changed the data. So in order to save this progress, because if we close down our development theme and then restart it, we're going to lose all this data. So I'm going to copy this and paste this over here. Not sure why there's all these red squiggly lines, but I'll just remove that completely. It's just a comment anyway. And as you can see here, we now have two sections in our header group, and the order down here makes a lot more sense now that we have more than one section. Our header doesn't have any editable settings, so that's just an empty object, but our announcement bar, you can see now that we've brought it in, has some stored settings. Now, like I said before, we have direct access to the data layer right here of the theme, so I can change this again. Welcome to our store. Hit save on that. This is going to be out of date now. And if I refresh over here, you can see that the online store editor is pulling the values directly from the JSON file. So as you can see, it now says welcome to our store. So you can edit data directly at the JSON level here, or you can edit it here and it ends up in the same place. Okay, but that gotcha with Shopify CLI, it's not going to automatically update your local code. You need to pull that code from the store itself. Okay, so here you can see so far we've used JSON to create a group of sections. We've used JSON within our announcement bar section to create settings, and then we're storing the values of those settings in that same header group JSON here. So this serves as both a list of sections and an order in which they appear, as well as a store of the settings that the user has set on them. Okay, and something to note as well is if it's the default value and you bring it into your template, that gets stored straight away. So even if I didn't set the text color to be white, which I didn't, because I set that as a default, as soon as I bring that section into my online store editor onto this template, then it's going to store it at the JSON level as if I did import it myself. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on the index template. this is the template that, as I mentioned before, has always been, as long as I've been a Shopify developer, responsible for hosting a variable list of orderable sections. So we're not going to be using content for index. I'm just going to actually deleting this and then creating the same file again with the .json extension. And then I'm going to create the boilerplate for a JSON template, which is basically just a settings object like this and an order array. I don't think we need to specify a name or anything like that. We just need a settings object and an order array. Sorry, not a settings object, a sections object. As you can see from the error message here, it was calling me out there. Okay, so what I need is some actual sections that make sense to bring across here. I mean, I can put the announcement bar within the template, but that really wouldn't make sense. So I'm going to create some sections that I would want to go in the home page template. Okay, so let me create another section here. Typically on an e-commerce site, you have like a hero section that appears on the home page. So that's the term for it. So I'm going to call it hero.liquid. And then ask ChatGPT, generate me a beautiful, rather than telling it to look nice after the fact, I'm just going to use the word beautiful here. Beautiful hero section for my e-commerce site. Make each piece of content editable in the section settings. Let's see what it does with a brief like that. Okay, it seems to be doing quite well. Okay, again, I don't like how it puts the schema ahead of the code, the HTML code, but we can easily move that down. Let's have a look. Okay, it's done that thing where it's done inline styles again. Please, no inline styles, use CSS classes. Okay, cool. So it's going to generate some CSS classes and then use classes instead of putting the styles in line, which I hope you agree is much cleaner. And also what I'm going to do now that we're refactoring everything to use sections is I'm going to use the same convention that the New Horizon theme in Shopify uses, which is to use these special style sheet tags. I'm not actually 100% sure what the benefit of using these over style tags is. I think it's something to do with the online store editor. Maybe makes it more responsive or efficient, but I'm going to replace this with style sheet and style sheet tags. That is incorrect spelling. It's just harder to read with end in front of it. Okay, there we go. Now you can see it's blue, so it's all good. Might indent that to make it a little bit more obvious.
And so, yeah, like I said, you can do the CSS however you want, but Shopify, for some reason, in Horizon, have done the section-specific JavaScript into these style sheet tags. So I'm going to refactor the header one as well. I don't really need this comment. So let's do style sheet, just copy it, and write the end in front of it. That way I won't get the spelling wrong. All right. Okay, what else do we have here? Announcement bar. We're not using any CSS file for that. That's all good. Okay, so let's go back to our hero here. And did it include the preset? It did. Okay, so let's say category, maybe we call it homepage sections. Because I don't know if this is going to go on any other. Oh no, let's still call it general because I want to put other ones in here that can go in any location. Okay. So in order to see this, we could obviously, if we were using liquid templates, do what I did before with the header, which is just put in a section tag. But no, we are moving into JSON templates now. So our options are to either put it in here ourselves at the JSON level or via the theme editor. I think the theme editor is just a nicer way to do it, whether you're a technical user or not. So let's do that right now, and we can also see what it will look like for the admin user anyway. Okay, so looks like we've got a bit of a problem here. Looks like we're still on the header group, not on the template. And I tend to encounter this problem when I am starting from scratch on a particular template. So sometimes
I might actually need to put in the section explicitly in the JSON. So in order to get around this issue when building from scratch, I'm just going to write it in the JSON. So it's hero. Actually, sorry, I've got to write the key here, which is hero or whatever I want it to be. And then in the type, I need to make sure that the type matches a specific file name. And then here, I'll put hero in the order. That should trigger in the online store editor to include that section and allow us to add other sections to our template. Here you can see we now have header group, but we also have this template group as well. And here you can see we've got the hero section, we've got all these settings, and if I have more sections, I can add them in here. Let's customize this hero section. Can we use AI or free images? Yeah, okay, so let's just say shoes. What looks most like our store? Probably that. If we select that. Let's see, welcome to Sexy Shoes. Discover the OG collection. I'll just link it to our only collection right now. And then for the button, something's showing up. We'll need to fix this. Collections, OG Shopify range. The button doesn't show up until you put a link in. Clever or not clever, you tell me. The image is coming through in this little icon here to the hero section, but it's not actually coming through on the front end. Let's go over to our front end again. Let's see what the issue is. Probably some poorly formed code. Let's see, hero section. Background, image. Okay, so you bring across the explicit code here rather than the actual output. Okay. So the problem here is that you can't actually insert liquid code into a style sheet tag. So we're going to need to bring this out. So we can either do it as a style attribute or do it in a separate style sheet. I'm just going to do it as a style attribute because honestly I don't mind when I'm bringing in values. I'm happy for them to just be in a style attribute. Okay, so we'll put it in there. Refresh over here. Now you can see we got this background image. Not a big fan of the cropping. What is going on here? Max width. Okay, I want it to be full width. So let me remove that max width. And there seems to be a lot of space above and below. Where's that coming from? Hero section, hero section. Okay, we don't need that much padding. So we'll remove that padding as well. What else do we want here? We've got background size cover, background position center, okay. And I don't want a border radius on the hero content. Okay, so we're looking a little bit better here. You can see, I believe the height of this section is based on the content within it, but maybe we want the height to be a bit bigger as well. So I can either use AI here or I can do it myself. Let me just do it myself. So I'll go in here, type, let's say number, ID, section, height. Okay, that's some good suggestions there. So now we're going to have some setting on the section setting object for height. And again, I'm going to put it on the suggestion that's almost correct. Heights, section settings, height. Get rid of that suggestion and just keep the top one. Okay. Let's have a look here now. In our online store editor, if we can change that height. Section height is 600, but the background image is going over the hero content. So I'm just going to want to move that up here. Right. Get rid of the style attribute on this one. There we go. So we've got that background on the hero content, but no, I don't really like how it just sits there. So maybe if I give this a height of 100%, okay, that works. And then if I want display, flex direction, column, and then justify content center. Okay, cool. It makes the button ridiculously big, but we can fix that. Hero content, put that there. I don't know why, but whenever you copy across display flex from the Chrome DevTools, it always does that. It always breaks up onto another line. Really annoying. Okay, we don't want this to be able to extend so far across the page. So actually, if I put in a max width here, that should fix it. But then the problem is, then we don't have that overlay. So actually, I'll just get rid of the overlay. Actually, yeah, we kind of need it. So maybe we put that on an element, call this div class hero overlay. Then I put the hero content nested within that. And then go hero overlay. I feel like I'm getting too bogged down on the visual elements of it. Actually, when I tried this earlier, the AI did a much better job. It came out looking basically perfect on the first try. So obviously, maybe a slightly different prompt, or the AI is just inconsistent. But now you can see for the actual content, we can define a max width. I'm going to choose 550 max width. 550 pixels. Okay, cool. So we've got this hero section here. That's pretty nice for our homepage. And the next section I'm going to build is a featured collection section, because that's super common. Right? Featured collection dot liquid. All right. Builds me a featured collection section. I want to be able to specify in my section settings what collection to use. Move the schema to the bottom, please. It's probably faster for me to do it myself, but I'm going to tell the AI. Maybe it'll learn if I tell it enough times to move it. Okay, so we've got our feature collection section. We've got two settings. One to define the collection that we want to bring across, and then the number of products to show, which is nice. We've got a preset so that we're able to add it. I'm going to say for category general, just to keep it in that same category. And if we just look a little bit at the code, we're bringing across the featured collection. The actual setting value is going to be the handle. It doesn't actually bring across the collection object. So we use the collections array or special object here to find the collection based on its handle. Okay, so this is going to give us the actual object of the collection, and then we can check how many products are in the collection. If there's none, we're going to say that it's empty. Otherwise, we're going to create this like section here, put through the title, and then loop through all the products, putting out product cards, limiting by the amount that we've put in the setting. Okay, so let me have a look at this. We're going to need to bring it into our template. So I'm going to refresh over here. Every time we make a change, we're going to want to refresh our online store editor. I'm going to hit add section here. It's not coming across. Do we have any errors? Okay, here we go. Min is not a valid attribute. So sometimes, let's see. Okay, so this is a number field. We don't have access to things like min and max. That's more for our range selector. If we fix that, that will fix our error. That's another important thing to note, guys. If something doesn't happen, if a change is not coming across, always check the console, see if there's an error. But with that fixed, we should be able to see it now. Yep, we have featured collection. Looks like in the preview there's already an error, but let's just bring it in anyway. Comparison with string of 0 failed. Okay, beautiful. All right. Let me just actually bring in some data and then we'll fix the section. So I'll go in here and I'll bring across the OG Shopify range. That seems to be the issue. Maybe that it was looking for a collection that wasn't there. So actually I will remove that collection and then account for this situation where a collection hasn't been specified. So interestingly enough, it is checking for featured collection right here. Let's have a look at that error message. Line 3, comparison of string with 0 failed. Okay. Featured collection. I'm not sure if this is actually the right attribute name. Let's look in our liquid reference. So collection. Where is it? There's so many different objects. Okay, here we go. Collection, products count. Okay, that's correct. Interesting. So, what is the comparison with string 0? Okay, it might be the case that if a collection hasn't been set here, this comes across as a string, and then we're trying to access the object on that. So let me just break up this if statement, just because I want to clear that error. It's not super important because, like, practically speaking, a admin user is not going to include an empty collection section, you would think. But yeah, just cleaner if we remove that error. Actually, let's just check whether this is not blank. So if featured collection is not blank, and then we can chain together different operators using AND. Okay, there we go. So that fixes it. So just need to check if the setting is blank first. Obviously, it is blank right now, so we're getting this else statement here, no collection selected or collection is empty. But if we add a collection here, OG Shopify range, that's going to work, and it's going to show 4 products probably. Yeah, if it's set up correctly. Okay, cool, but the styling is terrible. But let's fix that ourselves because we've already got a product card style in our collection template. So I want to recycle this. So if it's code that's going to be used across the site, I want to have it in my overall theme and CSS. So let's create, let's go back to our collection actually. Let me close down, I've got too many things open here. Let's go into, where was it? Collection.liquid, and we've got this thing called product grid item. Are there any other references to that? Product grid item. I just want to double check this before I go and change the name of this. Okay, there it is. So what I'm going to do is do a global search and replace.
So product grid item, I'm going to change to product card. I think is a bit nicer because maybe there's a chance that we're showing a product card not in a grid or in another way. I think just product card is nicer. And then what I'm going to do is take all of the product card styles right here and move them into my global CSS file, theme.css, along with the container, which we're using on multiple templates as well. And then we can go back to our featured collection section right here. And I want to refactor this to use, actually, basically we can just copy the same product card because we're looping through an array of products on a collection. We're looping through an array of products on this collection too. So I can just literally copy and paste that code. If it's working well on another page, why not? Into here. If we refresh over here, we're not going to get the nice grid yet, but we've got the styling of these products. So what's going on here? We need a better grid. Let me go over to here, search for that. Oh, I see. There's been no CSS. I didn't notice that until now. There's been no CSS generated for this. So let me write that. It added classes, but it did not add the CSS. Interesting. Please generate me the CSS for this section. Don't worry about anything within product card though. Okay, good. Seems to have refactored the HTML a little bit. Hopefully we haven't broken anything with that command or that prompt. Refresh over here. Aha, nice. Okay, so that's not bad. I don't mind that. The only problem is it's not in the container. So let's say that we want everything to be within the container here. And I think this is not going to work because there's some display flex happening in the container. Yeah, that's what ended up having our title on the left before. I think what we should do is remove this right here and then add that on a case-by-case basis. Okay, that's cool. It's gonna mess up our container up here. So we obviously need that for the container when it comes to our header. So we're gonna go over here to header. Where is it? Header here. And I'm going to, actually now that we're following the Horizon system, I'm actually gonna use nested CSS. So Horizon uses nested CSS, so I'm gonna go with it and use nested CSS as well. So within my header, within the container, within my header, I'm going to put that code, and that should fix up this issue up here while removing display flex from the other parts that use container. Okay, cool. So we've got kind of a homepage going here. One of the things I don't like about this theme so far is the font. Is this like Times New Roman or something? Looks pretty bad. Let's have a look. Font family. Nothing's coming up because nothing's actually set. And yes, because we didn't specify a font family at all, it's using Times, which, get with the times, guys, is not good. All right, so sorry for the dad joke. Let's actually fix that. And I think this is a great opportunity to add something within our theme settings so that the user can control the font. Okay, so if we go over to our online store editor here and we go into theme settings right here, you can see we've got access to theme settings, but there's nothing in there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some settings here to our schema. All right, so I'm gonna create a setting group here. So each of these objects is like a setting group within settings underscore schema. And I'm gonna call this the typography group, okay? Now maybe GitHub Copilot will be good at choosing the right settings here. You know what? It got it almost right, but there's a little bit of difference here. We need to put in a different value for default because this is going to be coming from kind of Shopify's own typography system. I don't like the idea of putting body before heading, so I'm going to rearrange these and then make sure to be careful of the commas here because JSON is very particular about that. And I'm actually just going to copy the default down here to up here. Okay. Now with this particular type of setting, the font picker, what it's going to generate is a font object for us. We could go into here, theme.css, and try and insert our font family here, but we can't actually insert liquid into a CSS file directly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our theme.liquid. We could put this in a snippet and then put it in our theme.liquid. I'm just going to do it like this. And then up here, I'm going to open up a style tag. Actually, I'll do the Shopify liquid version of that style. So if you keep seeing me look over to the camera, I'm just double checking that we haven't run out of battery or data on the camera. So apologies for that if that's a little weird. Oh my God. It won't let me tab into it without accepting the suggestion. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'll just paste in the code here because this is pretty standard. It's not going to change no matter what build you're doing. But here you can see I'm running the font face filter on the heading font in order to bring it in. And then I'm going to set on the root level some variables in CSS, the font heading family and the font body family. And so we can bring in the family off of that font object right here. And then it also brings in the fallback families as well. Cool. All right, so obviously this is not going to change anything until we use these within our CSS. Now that they're CSS variables, not liquid variables, we can actually use them in a pure CSS file. So I'm going to copy that. And then actually, let's do body first. All right, so we can put it in our body here, font family. Then we want to bring it in as a variable. Okay. And then for headings, I'm just going to do H1 to H6 font heading family. You can see there that it's figured it out. Usually a good idea to remove the margin and set it yourself. I'm going to not do that just to cut down on some work, but usually you want to set your own margins. And then if we refresh over here, I think it's probably going to bring in the default that we set. Actually, let's have a look here. And as you can see, the font has definitely changed. If we go have a look right here, OTS derived font. Okay, so it's definitely changed from times. So now we can go over to our theme settings, or we should be able to, and access the typography group, and then access these special font pickers. So right here, I can go into, let's change the heading font. The first one is the heading font. And let's change it to Abril Fat Face. And you can see here that all of our H1s to H6s are now changed. Okay, so let's try and choose something that's actually good. Actually, it looks all right. I actually like this one. This one looks okay. And Helvetica for the body font. That's cool with me. Yeah, let's just save that. Refresh over here. And that's looking pretty good. All right, guys, I'm losing my voice a little bit and it's lunchtime. So I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll finish off JSON-ifying our theme here. No more liquid templates apart from maybe the page and the cart we'll leave as liquid templates, but we'll definitely update our product and collection pages and possibly put in some locales as well. So yeah, let me rest my voice for a second and I'll see you very soon. All right, so I'm back now after my lunch break. I believe we had just added some settings to the settings_schema.json file. And as you can see here, our settings_data.json file is still empty. If you remember what I told you before, we actually need to go into the code editor, this particular one right here, which has the actual code, and bring that in if we want to save that code on future runs of the theme. So where is it? It's going to be in the config file here, settings_data, and you can see here that it's slightly different. This right here is a comment. We don't necessarily need it, and for some reason our code editor doesn't like it, so I'll just remove that. And as long as we're taking the exact same code from here, it shouldn't make any difference to our front end here because it matches, right? So we're just bringing that code onto our computer. One of the things I want to do here is just fix up this styling. This is too big for my liking. So maybe keeping with rems, we make it 1.5 rems, and I don't like the text align center. I want it to be left. I see. The H2 is targeting this right here, but then that ends up targeting the product cards as well. That's the conflict there. Okay, so I'll just fix that. Where was it? It was in featured collection, wasn't it? So instead of just having a H2 and targeting it like that, I'm going to actually give it a class of featured collection. And I like the BEM methodology of naming classes, so I'm going to use that, the double underscores. And then where it says up here, featured collection H2, just going to replace that there. And yeah, there we go. Now that's looking nicer. Okay. So in this journey to JSONify our theme, I don't think that's a word, but I just made it up, we are going to transform some of these templates into JSON files. So let's have a look at, okay, obviously in our homepage, we've got this template here that we can reorder sections on. If I go to my product template, you'll see that we don't have that because we are not using JSON templates here. Let's fix that. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to move this code into a section, because with JSON, we can't actually insert liquid. We just insert sections into our templates. So what I'm going to do is, how this is usually done is we have main dash and then the name of the template. So main dash product. That's how it's done in Dawn. Sometimes I like to use product dash template, but it's probably better to name it like this, main dash product, because it's like the main product section, and then underneath it we could have other sections, which I'll show you now. So I'm going to take all of that code out of the product.liquid, put it in the main product section here. And then I'm going to, because it's now in a section, I'm going to use that style sheet tag from Shopify, that special one. Just need to make sure that there's no inserted liquid in here because it doesn't work with that tag. And so what I'll do here is end style sheet, try and get the spelling correct this time. And then up here, just get rid of the end Okay. So that we just keep to that convention. And then I'm going to add a schema here, assuming it's now a section. And like I said before, I like to use GitHub Copilot to write schemas because it's quite good at it. So I'll say, write me a schema here. Maybe I'll be a bit more specific. JSON schema here for this product section. And I'll say no settings required for now. Okay, so there we go. You'll see it has a blocks array. We're going to cover blocks in the next section, but it does give us a main product section and a tag as well.
We're going to remove blocks for now. Settings can just remain empty. And then we're going to want to delete our product.liquid template. And then we're going to create a product.json template instead. I probably could have just renamed the file actually, but oh well. And because with a brand new JSON template like we saw before, it might not actually show up in the online store editor. I'm just going to code it in now. So I'm going to say sections, open up an object here, and it's going to be main products. Actually, I'm just going to call it main for short. And then of course, when I put in the type here, it has to relate to a actual section and file name. So it's going to be main-product. And we need our order array in our JSON as well. So I'll put in and then put in main. Let me know too, guys, what you think of these AI suggestions just in general. Are they annoying to watch when you're watching a tutorial? Maybe there's some way where I can get the best of both worlds and have the suggestions when I want it, but turn them off when I don't want them. Okay, so let's go over to our product template. Just select one of these products, go to Insane Shoes, and voila, it's working. So let's have a look at that in our online store editor. And then as you can see here, we've got, just like we have on the home page, we've got template, and we've got main product. We've got basically everything the same as before, except now we have the ability to add a section. So if we wanted to feature a collection below the main product, so I'm going to do the only collection we have on our store, OG Shopify range. And actually, I wanted the option to customize the title as well. So let's add that into our featured collection section. So where was it? Right here, featured collection title. I'm going to write the object first, and then I'll write the schema code for it. There's a filter in Liquid called default now. It's been out for a few years, I think. So we can say, if this is set, I'm going to use it. If not, we'll default to the featured collection title. Right now, there is no such setting, so it's definitely going to go to featured collection title. But what I'm going to do is add in a setting for that type. Oh, here we go. It's already accept that suggestion. Type text. Yeah, let me accept that suggestion from an AI. Defaults, featured collection. Actually, let's just remove the default altogether. Because if it's blank, it's still going to default to the featured collection title. And then I'll refresh over here. And by the way, guys, while we're on the topic of sections, if I use this section in multiple places, remember the data for this section is stored according to where I've included it in a particular instance. It's kind of hard to articulate. Let me just show you. So if I had a featured collection section here and I create a different title, so I say shop other shoes in the collection, right? As you can see here, this is not going to affect another instance of that section somewhere else on the theme. So if I go back to my home page, you can see we've got a featured collection section here. It's going to have this blank. So while the code might be shared amongst these sections, each instance has its own settings that are stored within, in this case, the product template, so the product.json, and in the other case, on the home page, the index.json. So just wanted to make that clear. And if I was to include two of these on the same page, I can have different settings for both as well. Just say hello, something stupid like that. You can see here that we can include multiple instances of the same section with different section data for each. Okay, cool. So now that we have made the JSON template, the merchant or the admins, whoever's managing the store, can now add more sections below the main product section if they so choose. Easily hide them and bring them back. It's all within the theme editor now. Okay? So I'm going to do that also with, let's say, the collection template as well. So exact same, I'm going to call it main collection. Turn that template into a section now. So grab all of this code. Actually, just clear that completely. And put it in main collection. You're going to want to give this a schema. As you can see here, pretty good suggestion, main collection. And then in this case, instead of deleting the file, I think I can just rename it. And then you know what? I might just copy this because it's very, very similar. And then just switch from main product to main collection. Cool. That's a typo there. Okay, and then let's go over to our collection template here. And you can see we've got the same thing, except now we can add a section beneath it. Okay, not sure what section we want to add, but the option is there. And then finally, if I go to the About Us page, or the page template for that matter, you'll see here it's embedded on the template. We don't want that. We want the same thing as above here. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, main-page.liquid. Cool. And then take that content, put it in main-page, accept the schema recommended by the AI. I'll call this page, I'll call this main page. Just to make that clear, main page. And then change this again to .json and copy and paste, replacing product here with page. Okay? And so now we can see as we refresh the difference between using a liquid template and a JSON template. Now we have the page code, or the previous page code, as main page, as a section, which allows us to add more sections here. Now, what I'll show you as well right now is we can easily create, and nowadays we can actually do this in the online store editor. In the past, you had to do this manually, but now I can create a template based off of this template. I can say, create based off the default page, special page, right? And in this special page, maybe I have very specific sections. So I don't think we can delete this until we add new sections here. But let's just say, for instance, we have another page that looks very similar to our home page. Maybe like a landing page for another section of our store or a sub-brand. Well, we can delete the main page section, right? And then we can say special, let's just say secret range. Right? See the secret range below or whatever. Okay? Again, this is not going to affect the section by the same name on the home page because each instance of the section has its own data. And then we only have one collection on our store, so we're just going to put in OG Shopify range here. And maybe I'll just say jokes, it's the OG range. Okay? So, not a very practical example, but obviously it's a case-by-case basis. And now that we've created this special page, we just need to assign it to a page in our store. So this is confusing to a lot of people. Pages by default are just title and content, but we can create, these special pages that are different lists of sections. So I can go in here and switch the template. Actually, we can't select it unless it's added to the currently live theme. So we just need to do that over here on the Horizon theme. Add a template. It's going to be page, and we just need to match the handle up here, special page, the template name up here, special page. Right, and this is just going to copy the JSON from the page template, so it's pretty safe to use on a live theme. But at least what that allows us to do now is, looks like I didn't actually create the page at the end, but now I should be able to select that page template. It's not seeming to come up. There we go. Special page, special collection, right? Let's make that visible. And then, if I go over to here and refresh over here, it should show the page that I assigned it to. There we go, assigned to one page, the special page, and so now, if I look at that special page, it's not going to use the standard template, it's going to use this special template, okay? For some reason, it's showing it on horizon up, and that's because I clicked view. Obviously, that would be the case, so I just need to look at it on my local version, and you can see secret range, see the secret range below. So if you're ever wondering how to create custom pages on Shopify through your theme, that's how you would do it. But as you saw from how I did that, it was a completely no-code solution. I was able to create it from the customizer, or from the online store editor, I should say, via this create template button, rearrange some sections, put some content in, create a page, assign that to a page, and it doesn't really require any code. But that's how you can do alternative templates. I thought I would just mention that while we're on the subject, okay? This is a poor example, so I'm just going to delete this completely. And as long as I don't bring in that alternative template from my development instance right here into my local files, that will get wiped whenever I disconnect the CLI and reconnect it. So I will just let that die away in the next run of this theme. And then to finish off the JSON section, I'm not going to touch cart.liquid because, like I said, we're going to build a side cart so that the user ideally never even reaches this page. But what I'm going to do is create locales. Now, what are locales? Locales are basically the translation files. So this is a feature within Shopify where you're able to swap out content based on what language the user is viewing the website on. As an English speaker who doesn't speak any other languages and only works on stores that are presented in English, I hardly see this being used, but if you were to create a legit theme for the theme store, you would probably have to do this. So just to give you a really quick overview, I believe if we look at the code here for our store, we can actually see whenever we look in the online code editor for our Shopify store, it's going to have all the folders. So even if they're empty, you can see here, we've got a locales folder. So if you're ever wondering how to structure our theme, the answer is right there. So in locales, what I'm going to do is create a en.default.json. Now, to be honest, I'm never creating this from scratch, so forgive me if I forget a few details here, but this is where you can put in a JSON structure where you can put in pieces of text, and then you bring in those pieces of text via liquid variables. But it's a little bit different to how we've seen so far. We use the T filter to translate a path to the translation into an actual translation. Again, it's going to make more sense once I actually show you. So it should be pretty simple. I should just be able to create an object here. Let's just say general. Again, it's not the perfect example. If you look at an actual translation in a production level theme, they've got tons of objects here that are organized in a better fashion. Let's just say general. What's a piece of generic text that we can do here? As you can see here, because I removed the page, we can't actually access that page anymore, but let's have a look. A lot of the text will be customizable for us based on what we put in the theme settings. I'm trying to think of an example here. Let's just say it has to be something generic, so probably the cart page. Your cart. Okay, so let's do cart. Okay, so we have a cart object, and then we'll say title, right? And then we'll say your cart. Okay, and then empty. Your cart is currently empty. This is a good example because this is something we really wouldn't change unless the language is changing. And so what we would do now is in our cart template, we would go here, and instead of your cart, we would replace that with a reference to the translation. So what is it? It was cart, and then we put a dot to grab anything nested within that. Cart title. And then if we just insert it like that, we're just going to get literally cart.title. So what we need to do is filter that through the T filter. And then now you'll see that we get your cart. Okay. And then for your cart is empty, we're going to go grab this to start with, and the attribute we're looking for is empty. So we're going to go empty here. And then maybe we do continue shopping. So we'll do continue shopping as continue shopping. So we can throw that in here as well. And so what this allows us to do by making these variables is we can then swap these out with different languages. Did I just close it down? No, here it is. Cart.continue shopping, filter that by T to get the translation. As you can see, we get the same result. And then what this allows us to do here is, let me create, I think FR is French. Let's just paste in the English version there, and then I'll just translate this in Google. English to French. Votre panier.
Votre panier.
Votre panier. Okay, so we can put in the French version of your cart here. Let's put in.
Votre panier est actuellement vide.
French is very sexy sounding, isn't it? Okay. And then continue shopping.
Continuez mes achats.
Continuez mes achats. Okay. Alright, so as you can see here, because we've got a variable in here for cart title, cart empty, cart continue shopping, it's going to show up when we're looking at our store in English with these values. But if somebody is looking at the store in French, it's going to replace those with the French version. And if you look at a production theme, you'll see that there are tons of these different locales inside this folder. I'm obviously not going to spend a ton of time building out a list of hundreds of locales for various languages. That wouldn't be a very good use of our time, I don't think. But I thought it would be remiss of me not to mention locales in this video. Okay, so I believe we've covered all the main areas
of JSON. We've got JSON templates right here, which, as you should remember, represent lists of sections and their stored settings on the template. Then we've got our section schemas, which define what settings. Actually, heading doesn't have any. Let me go to hero. Then we've got our section schema right here, which define the settings and the blocks, which we're about to get to on that section in order for us to edit it. We've got section groups. So we've got header group right here, which is similar to JSON templates. We've got locales for storing different translations. And then we've got config, which is basically two files. Settings underscore schema.json, where we have to put in this object in order to have the theme running on the store. And then we can put in groups of different theme settings that we can access throughout our store. Okay. Finally, we've got settings underscore data.json, which stores the value of those theme settings. And one thing I didn't really make clear before is that to access those settings, those overall theme settings, we can do that from wherever in the theme. We don't write section.settings. It's just literally just the settings object. So that's why it's a good idea if you have a ton of settings in here, you need to really use IDs that are unique here, because you don't go into the group first and then go into the ID. All of the settings here, no matter what group they are, all sit on that settings object. All right, so we've now got our theme fully JSON-ified, and now let's talk about blocks. All right, guys, we're on to stage 3 now, and before we get started, I just want to apologize for the interruptions in audio. It's an issue I've been having with this microphone and this computer. Sometimes I start recording, it's all good, and then it gets all crackly. So I want to apologize for that. I've got my phone here as another backup just in case it does get a little choppy with this microphone. So appreciate you sticking with me through those periods, and hopefully it won't happen as much for the rest of this video. But yeah, Like I said, never made a video this long before, so I think my equipment is struggling a little bit. Okay, so we're on to blocks now. So let's get into creating a section that utilizes something called section defined blocks. Okay, so very recently, you can check the previous 3 videos on this channel where I talk about the announcements made in Shopify Editions 2025. But Shopify recently announced as part of that edition something called theme blocks. But this is the 3rd type of block now, starting with section defined blocks, then app blocks, and now theme blocks that Shopify has. So before there were app blocks, which came out in 2021, and before there were theme blocks, which came out in 2025, there was only one type of blocks that you could do: section defined blocks. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with section defined blocks. I'm going to briefly introduce app blocks, and then we'll look at theme blocks as well, which is the most modern way at the time of recording of doing blocks. Okay, now I think a good section to build in order to demonstrate this is a footer section. Now we did a section group up here for the header. Let's actually do the same thing for the footer. So I'll do sections footer group. Okay, now of course we don't have a footer group yet, so we need to add that in. Footer group dot liquid. All right, oh sorry, not dot liquid, dot JSON. What am I doing here? And I'm just gonna copy the header group just to make it easier for me. Switch everything that says header to footer. So footer up here, footer group, and then get rid of the announcement bar. Obviously, I'm going to change this to footer, get rid of this announcement bar in the order, change this to footer as well, and then in the type footer as well. Okay, then I'm going to go down and create a section, footer.liquid. Remember guys, as always, this file name needs to match what's in type here. So if you named your file footer section, you would need to write footer section here. Okay, but it's pretty standard to write your footer section name as footer.liquid. Cool. All right, so now I'm going to ask ChatGPT again to write me a footer section. Please write for me a footer section with 3 columns, actually 2 columns, menu on the left and newsletter sign up on the right. No settings, no section settings, I should say. Section settings, no blocks, but make it look nice. I wonder if that actually does work to say make it look nice. Okay, here we go. And it's gonna do that damn thing where it doesn't put the CSS into a separate style sheet. Super annoying. Okay, nice, but I want the CSS separate and brought in with classes. And you also forgot the section schema. All right, so what is it doing now? Yep, okay, it's adding the schema. Well, what about the CSS? Okay, great. You added the classes to the elements, but I need the CSS for those classes as well. Okay, let's see. It's adding in the CSS. Oh my god. What about the original code? Oh man. I need the CSS, the HTML, and the section schema. I wonder if it's going to understand what I'm saying here. Sometimes AI can be smart, sometimes it can't be. Damn, okay. Oh, let me rewrite this prompt. Oh, it's got the ending footer tag? That's so bizarre. Please write for me a footer section with 2 columns, menu on the left and newsletter sign up on the right. No section settings, no blocks, but make it look nice. Include a section schema and the CSS classes inside style. Actually, I'll try and get it to write it in the Shopify way. Style sheet and style sheet tags. All right, let's see if it can do that for us. Okay, cool. It's added it within the style sheet tags. Let's see if it generates the HTML and the schema. Okay, looking good so far. Okay, did it do the schema? Yes, brilliant. Okay, I'm gonna accept that. No errors in our console, that's good to see. And then it should be included on our templates. Nope. Okay, footer does not refer to an existing section file. Okay, so when I wrote footer here, I did not actually have the section file, so it probably did not save. So I'm just gonna do a quick add space, delete space to get the footer group to save again. And then now you can see we've got our footer down here, okay? On the left, we've got a menu. I believe it's the same menu as the header menu. And then we've got the newsletter section down here, which should work. Again, I got to check the code that came back from Copilot, but that should work. Okay. All right. So let me go back into my footer here and let's have a look at what it's doing. So it's taking the links from the main menu link list and putting it under this menu title here. The menu title is not customizable. In fact, nothing is customizable here apart from the items in the main menu link list here. And that means that if I was to change it in the navigation section of my store, it would change it for the top main menu as well. And then right here, newsletter subscribe URL. I don't know if that's legit. Let's go into our liquid objects, routes object. Here we go. Let's see, is there anything for newsletter? No, so that's incorrect. Newsletter subscribe URL. So yeah, be careful guys with the suggestions from AI. Sometimes it gets it wrong and it can even make you second guess yourself. So like I said, having access to AI is not an excuse to not understand what actually is going on. It's just to save time for us who have already done it a million times before. So what we're looking for here instead is the, let's see, is there anything here? No, I don't think it's actually in the routes object here. But that's all right. We can just replace this whole thing with the liquid form tag. And then we'll put here contact, because there's no such thing as newsletter in Shopify Liquid. It's just contact. And what this will do is it will submit the person's email to the back end of our Shopify store, which will then send an email to the admin. Okay, that's the standard functionality. So actually, let me test this. So I'll go over to here. Let me put in my email, chris@christhefreelancer.com, and hit subscribe. To continue, let us know that you're not a robot. I'm not sure if this is going to work on the development version. All the things that can be used to write, let's say keyboards. Surely that's what they mean. Hit submit. Your answer wasn't correct. I don't know if this is because my answer wasn't correct or it just doesn't work on the development local version, which is sometimes the case when you're submitting forms. So understand that. Yeah, I think the challenge doesn't work when you're on the development version. So we'd have to upload this theme to the store and try it that way. But I'm pretty sure this is set up correctly. We're using the correct form tag here. If I look at the code right here, you can see here that it generates all this HTML for us and sends it to this URL. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to making this a bit more customizable. So one of the things I've seen, a very common pattern in a lot of footer sections on a lot of themes, is using blocks to build the footer, right? And each block essentially being a column. On desktop at least, until the screen size shrinks and then they sort of stack on top of each other. So each of these columns here, you could say, could be represented as blocks. Now the benefit of blocks on a section, just like sections on a template, is that we can reorder them and give them settings. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is down here in our schema, Remember we had a settings array before. This time I'm going to have a blocks array. Now with a blocks array, and you can see here this suggestion is actually pretty spot on. What we need to do is add a list of our block types. And then within the block type, we have the settings for that block type, okay? So what we can do is we can have a single type and we can just add the same style of block over and over again. Or we can have multiple types, and these types have different settings and they also have a different identifier in the code for us to check. You'll see what I mean right now. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a loop within our section, and we're going to loop through all the blocks. For each iteration, we're going to check what type of block it is, and then we can render the relevant code for that type. Okay, so let's do that right now. I'm going to right here. These are going to be blocks, so I'm going to just comment them out for a second. And then above here, I'm going to write for block in section blocks. So instead of taking the settings object off of the section object, I'm going to take the blocks array off of the section object. And then I'm going to set up a case statement here. So I'm going to look at the block type. Oh man, these AI suggested, I mean, they're handy when you want them, but otherwise it can be quite annoying. I'm going to put my end case here. And this allows us to write basically a case statement. If you've used JavaScript before, or any other programming language, it's like a if then else, but with lots of different options. There's only two here, so maybe I could have just used an if then else, but if we had lots more types, we would definitely need this, and we're going to use this later when we blockify the product template. Okay, so when the block type is menu, we're going to render this content right here. We're going to render the block for menu. And then when the block type is newsletter, as you can see here, the suggestion from GitHub Copilot is actually good. We're going to render this. And with when, we don't need to do end when. We just need to write the code after it. And usually there's a default, but I'm not going to do a default in this case. And so there we go. We can now have the user determine what block types we want to bring in and in what order. But also we have this setting here for determining what linked list to use. So I want to use that instead. So up here, instead of linked lists main menu, I'm going to put in here a reference to a block setting. So instead of section.settings and then grab the setting via its ID, we're going to use block.settings and then the title of the ID, so menu underscore links. Okay, so that should grab the handle of the linked list, and then just like we did with the featured collection, we're going to find that on this global linked list object, which will return the actual linked list object, and then we're looping through the links array on that object. I also want to be able to customize this menu title here, so let me do that. I'll just write a simple text field here, type text ID menu title, and then let's just say menu title. I thought that was default. Quick links, let's just say that. So then I'm going to replace this with a block setting, block.settings menu title. Oh no, that's not it. Menu underscore title. All right, cool. So because we haven't set up any of these, oh, hold on a second. Oh, here's your problem. Can't have a ID like that, as you can see from the error down here. Now that we've defined some blocks in our schema and we're reading off the blocks array in order to render these different columns, you'll see that our footer is now empty. So in order to populate this footer, we need to add some blocks. So I'm going to go into my theme editor here, and I can do this on virtually any page, but I'll do it on the home page. You can see now we have the header group, we have the group of sections for the template, and then we have the footer group. Okay, so down here we have the footer, and if I click this little icon here, I can add a block. If I click on add a block, just like when we were adding sections, we get this nice little menu and we get the options available that we specified in the section. So I'm going to start with a footer menu, And then the second block is going to be a newsletter sign up. Now the newsletter sign up has no customizable settings as it says here. It just generates the newsletter sign up form in place. And the benefit of it being a block is I can rearrange it within this footer. Okay, but with the footer menu, I need to update this if I want, or I could just keep it the default. Menu, quick links, whatever I want. And then I believe by default, when you open a store, it'll give you a footer menu by default. And so I can bring in the footer menu, which is a different menu to the main menu up here, which I think makes sense. Now, because these are blocks, this means I can, rearrange them, or I could add in a third block. You know, if I had a third menu here, or I could have two menus and then the newsletter sign up. This section, I believe, is set to flex, so it just divvies up the space amongst the different columns. Okay, so I'll just delete that block. Let's have a look at it on our front end. As long as we've saved it, there you go. Now we seem to have had a bit of issue with padding. Yeah, it's just sitting right up against the edge. So if I just add container to footer container, that should fix it. So yeah, we just want to make sure we're using the same container. And this, let's see what settings are here for the footer container. Okay, we don't really need this because we have that in our own container, but the rest we'll keep in footer container. And there you see we have our first example of blocks. Another area I want to show you blocks, I'm going to code this up in a similar way to how we just did the footer, is on the product page. Now, Shopify have changed this once again with the Horizon theme, but what you can see on the Dawn theme is that we're able to reorder of the product information column here using blocks. Okay, so let's do the same thing with our theme as another example of blocks and give our admin users a bit more customization options within the online store editor. So I'm going to replace this empty, we weren't using it anyway, settings array and put in a blocks array. Okay, so we're just going to put in a range of types. Actually, we'll do a different type for each piece, let's say, of the product information. So the first one I'm going to call title. And for most of these, actually, probably for all of them, I won't have any settings. So they won't be customizable, but they'll at least be reorderable in the section. So the first one's going to be title. The next one's going to be, let's accept description. What else was it? Add to cart button and price. So let's see if AI can figure that out. Price and add to cart. Okay, let's accept that and just delete the image one. And if we want to, we can add settings to these as well, but I'll leave these on without any settings. And then instead of just having these in the particular order that I have specified, I will let the user specify them in the online store editor. The user being the admin user, by doing the same thing that we did in the footer. In fact, I might even just copy and paste some of that code because I'm lazy, okay? So right here, for block in section blocks, grab this case statement. I'm gonna close it. Always a good idea to close things when you open them so you don't cause a mess. And then for here, I'm gonna put title, right? And then so when the admin user includes a title block, I'm gonna just put in the title. This text we don't really want to customize because it's already coming through dynamically from the product title. As you can see here, because we've already written it below, the AI is pretty good at figuring out what's going on. So it's going to suggest the rest. But if we just put the button here without any form, the button is not going to be operational. So what I'm going to do is put the add to cart button with an actual form, okay? Right here. So the add to cart button is actually the form as well. All right, so here we go. Schema tag must not be nested inside other tags. Okay. So it looks like we haven't closed a tag properly. Yes. I was just talking about how it's important to close your tags because you don't want any errors. And I forgot to put in the N4. So there you go. Luckily, we have our console here to tell us when we're doing things incorrectly. So now you'll see our product information section is empty. And so maybe we want to put in a preset here. So I can do that with blocks right here in our preset. There we go. put in a little blocks array. I think that's the right syntax, but I believe because we've already included the section on our template, it's not going to actually bring that across. It's only if we install the section somewhere new. So that's not going to work anyway. So what I'm going to do is just manually update the online store editor here. And we're going to want to save that information as well, like we did before, so we don't lose it. So in the main product section here, I'm now going to build my product page using blocks, title, description. Remember before we had the description at the bottom? Well, now it's changed. We can actually move this around. The add to cart button is usually at the bottom. I think I want the price above the description. And as you can see here, this creates a new problem in terms of margins and padding. So as we move them around, the space in between each of these becomes different. So we'd want to build that into our CSS, make our CSS flexible enough for that. But I'm not going to get too bogged down on those details. Let's double check that we can still add these insane shoes to the cart, which we can. But now, through the online store editor, because we're using blocks, we can change this. And actually, Shopify has this cool feature where it puts a different icon in if it understands what we're looking at. So as you can see for title, it put in this nice text icon. For price, it understands that we're looking at a price, so it puts in a nice icon. So as you can see here, this is a nice little user experience for the admin users of the Shopify store. So that's basically section define blocks, but we can also add in app blocks as well through this other tab here. It says it doesn't have any other apps installed here. I'm not sure if that's necessarily true, because there's one thing we need to add to our schema in order to bring in app blocks, and that is this special one, type, and then we just put in app. All right, we can tell it's a special one via this special character here of @ and that should enable us to add in app blocks into the section. Although this might be deprecated now, it might be redundant, because yeah, it looks like the app menu still opened up for me even though I didn't put that in there. So maybe Shopify have changed this now and it's not compulsory, or not. So as you saw before, that wasn't there before. It's interesting, we were able to see the apps tab right here, but it said no apps available. So bit of a misnomer there. I thought that might have indicated that we did have app blocks enabled on the section, but we just didn't have any apps installed on our store. But it's actually the case that yes, in order to bring in app blocks into a particular section, we need to write a block type here with the special @app type. Okay. All right. So that's all I'll say on app blocks. Basically, if I bring this in, it's going to bring in code from an external app. There's not much control we have over the actual code that comes through with that block. The principle here is that we're simply able to add this app functionality in place on any section that has app blocks enabled. I'm going to delete that because it doesn't really do anything anyway. I need to actually install some proper apps in my store. I believe that app is just from Shopify. Let's have a look. Sign in with shop button. Yeah, it didn't really render anything anyway. Let's talk about the final type of block, theme blocks, which is very new. It actually came out 6 months ago, but is all the hype now 6 months later because Shopify just released their new theme at the time of recording, the Horizon theme. All right, so this Horizon theme right here has something called theme blocks, which I might actually demo for you right here. This is a better example than what we're going to build in this particular build a theme from scratch video. But as you can see here, you're able to nest blocks within blocks. And if I click on this, you get a full list broken up into different categories like we saw with the sections. So blocks have become almost like sections that you can nest within other sections and within other blocks. Okay, but again, I'll show you that right now with my own theme. What we're going to do is we're going to create something that exists within the Horizon theme called the custom section. Okay, so call it custom section. Because theme blocks allow us to heavily customize a section, it becomes a little bit harder to name our sections, and so we can just write something like custom section and allow it access to theme blocks, which in turn gives it so much flexibility it could turn into anything. Okay, Hopefully this will make sense as I start to build it. So I'm not going to use AI here because I don't even know how to describe this, but I'm going to write a schema here for this section, end schema, right? And what I'm going to do is, just create, I don't know, like a section HTML element, right? This is just going to be a placeholder really for content that's going to be brought in by blocks, okay? Yeah, that does bring up a good point that I should put this in a container. And then in my schema, let's just start with a pretty normal schema. I'm going to have the name, which came up before, custom section. And then in here, I'm going to have blocks, but instead of section define blocks, I'm going to give it the ability to bring in theme blocks. So how do we do that? Just like we did for app blocks, I'm going to do type, and instead of at app, I'm going to do at theme. Okay, this is the special identifier for any type of theme block. Currently, we don't have any theme blocks in our theme. We'll get to that in just a sec. But in order for that content, whatever blocks we select to be inserted inside our section here, we would write content for blocks. Okay? So this is the basic structure of a section where we can bring in whatever theme blocks we like. Now we're going to create our final folder. I believe this is the final folder that we will put in our theme for this build a theme from scratch video. And let's build some blocks. So there's a block you'll see in the Horizon themes called group, which because we're able to nest theme blocks within other theme blocks, you can create something called a group, which operates pretty similar to the custom section that we just built. In fact, I might even just grab it, copy and paste it into here, and then instead of section class container, I'm just going to call this block group. Okay, so we can group together different blocks we bring in. I'm not going to call this custom section. I'm going to call this group. All right, and then within here, I'm going to create some blocks full of different elements. So let's say a text block. Okay. Let's see if AI can figure this one out. Please write me a block with a schema. Please write me a text block. I want to be able to edit the text and choose what type of element the text will sit inside. Let's see if ChatGPT can figure this one out. All right, pretty good. I think this is going to work. So as you can see here, it's going to bring through whatever tag we set here, and it's going to default to P. If that hasn't been set, we're going to replace our HTML tags with whatever tag has come through, which is what we've set up here. And then we're bringing through the text. Now we seem to have an error here. Okay, no, we don't. All right, that's all fixed. Your text here, we don't really want that. I guess we do, yeah. I'll just say text. Cool. All right. Next block. Now, I'm not bringing them in just yet because it makes more sense if we have more of these, and then you will see this all working in action very soon. Write me a button block with schema. I want to be able to customize the button color, background, and text color, and the button text, and the button link. Cool. Write me a button block with schema. I want to be able to customize the button color, the button text, and the button link. Yeah, I think that's it. Cool. It's using inline styles, which I'm cool with because we're using settings from the actual schema. So I'm okay with that in this situation. It says custom button. Maybe we can recycle some styles from here. Hero button. Okay, we might need to create, let's see. Actually, let's do that right now. Let's go into theme.css and I'll just ask ChatGPT, write me a generic button style to use throughout the theme. Cool. All right, it's got its hover and focus state. So let me find, I think buttons have been brought in with the BTN. So we can have a look here. Header action BTN. I don't want to change that, obviously. That's the account button and the cart button. And I don't want to change, actually for the hero I do. I want to put in button, main cart, add to cart button. Let's put in button as well. We might have to change this up, but it's a good idea to have a consistent button. That cart continue button is not really a button. Okay, so there we go. So now we're going over to our button element here. It's custom button, but it hasn't given us any CSS for that, so I'm just going to say button. And then finally, let's put in a final block here. Final theme block, image.liquid. And then write me a responsive image block with schema. This seems to work quite well. What else did I say for the other ones? With schema, oh, I told it what I wanted to be able to customize. I want to simply be able to select what image to use. All right. Cool. Yep, it's generating the source set. Love this. Okay, great. So generating me a pretty nice responsive image. I'm just going to call this image, not responsive image. And yeah, that's it. We've got 4 blocks in our blocks folder right here. I talk about this more deeply in the new block section on the Shopify Liquid module on shopifythemedevelopment.com. But as you can see here, theme blocks can actually be nested 8 levels deep. But the way I've got it set up here is group is the only block that can nest other theme blocks in it, because I write this right here in the blocks array and I have content for blocks. The other ones are at the end of the tree. They're at the end of what can be nested. Okay, so none of these can have blocks nested within them unless I added in that blocks array with the type of at theme and then put in content for blocks somewhere here. But that just wouldn't make sense. Why would I want to nest other blocks within a button? These are sort of small elements that can be nested within groups, which then can be nested within any section that utilizes theme blocks, which in this case is just custom section. All right, hold on a second. There's an error here. Button link default is invalid. Okay, this is a common mistake by LLMs. You would think that you'd be able to put in hash as a default, but you can't in Shopify. Okay. All right, so that was a lot of coding without seeing the end result. So let's have a look now and you'll see how this actually works in the online store editor. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my home page. I'm going to bring in a custom section. Now remember guys, we need to write a lot of CSS for this, so it's not going to look amazing. And I just realized there that we haven't put in the preset, so I'm not going to be able to bring this onto our template. So let's refresh after adding that preset. And then, yeah, what was I doing? I was adding a section, custom section. And then now when we click add block, we're going to get the list of available blocks, or that's what I was expecting to get. So far, we're only getting the generate button, which allows us to AI generate a theme block. You can see it says no blocks available for this section. I actually forgot to put in presets here for the blocks. So we need presets here as well if we want to be able to add them from the online store editor. So it's as simple as that. Just add one preset to the presets array on each of these blocks. So after the blocks array, presets, custom button, image. After settings here, I'll put in a presets. Again, just accepting the suggestion here from GitHub Copilot. Presets, text block. Okay, so we've got presets added to all of our blocks now, so we should be able to add them in our online store editor. I'm going to refresh the online store editor now to check. And then if I click add block here, you can see we've got group, which has no category, so it sits at the top. Actually, let's give group a category. In Horizon, it has the category of layout, so I'm going to give it that. And it's a good descriptive, I said layout, instead of category layout. It's a good description because it's different to the other elements here, which are actual elements. Group is just a grouping of elements. So it really does need to sit in its own category, or should sit in its own category. All right, so there you go. We've got our layout category here, and we've got our custom category here. Maybe there would be a better name for that. But here we can add in 2 groups. So I'll add in 2 groups. Actually, let's add in 3 groups. Why not? Okay. And then we can add in blocks within these group blocks. So here I will add in a text block. And I'll say, let's make these H2s or H3s and say blurb 1. I'm not going to make this super practical. I'm just going to really show you an example here of adding in theme blocks. But a lot of themes actually haven't caught up to this. Horizon, as far as I know, Shopify's own theme that just came out, is the only theme that is using this right now. We don't have any CSS here. Text block, I'll add in a button. But yeah, we don't have any CSS here, so we're gonna get some weird results. Click me, right? I'll go into here and let's just do the same thing for all of them. Again, this is not super practical because if we know exactly what type of section we're building, we can just build the section without making it super customizable. Sometimes it's better not to have customization options. So I've got this Beatles record here. Let me just search other Beatles stuff. This is going to be the least practical example I show here. Record in this little building a theme from scratch, but this is more just like a demo so that you're aware this is an option to build into your theme from scratch. How come my image block is not working? I thought I put in a record. Maybe I didn't hit select. Okay, before I do the last one, I just want to fix this up. The images are coming through as full width. Let's first of all, in our image block, go up here, style sheet, end style sheet. Yeah, feel free to skip this part because I'm not going to leave this in the theme. I'm just doing this to show you guys theme blocks if you did want to build it into your theme. But yeah, like I said, nobody has built this into their theme as of yet. So it's all very new apart from Shopify Horizon. That should help a little bit. Okay, not exactly. Oh, yeah, there we go. And then in our custom section here, let's just say flex section, style sheets, end style sheets, flex section, display flex, flex wrap. Yeah, let's try that. Okay, so it's going to try and put everything next to each other. As you can see here, it becomes quite tricky when you add in theme blocks. You've got to be able to account for all scenarios. Let's just say within the flex section. So yeah, we're yet to see what's going to happen with how theme developers use theme blocks. I'm going to put this to flex 1. Okay. Shopify block. Let's go back to here. Why is the image so damn tall? Let's say height auto. Okay, cool. Where do we put that in the image? Back over here. Image is wigging out hard. Height auto. Okay, let's finish this example and then move on to JavaScript, the juicy stuff. So one more. Let's put in a text block. Third blurb 3, heading 3 I think we're using. Yeah. And then image block, record. Doesn't really matter what image we use. Let's just use that image. And then a button for click me. And then you can see we've got this, 3 columns of 3 blocks nested within each. And I can rearrange this if I want, but I wouldn't really want to because of design inconsistency. But each of these groups is kind of like a column, and I can rearrange them like I did down here with the footer, except with section defined blocks, we can't actually nest blocks within blocks. So if we want nesting, we're going to have to use theme blocks, okay? But like I said, you can customize this however you want, build this to your own needs. I'm going to throw this out, and now let's move on to JavaScript. All right, so we're up to the final stage of this theme build. We're going to now introduce JavaScript into our theme. As you can see here from the theme code, we've worked with JSON, we've worked with Liquid, CSS, and of course HTML, but we haven't introduced any JavaScript yet. JavaScript is super important in modern theme development. In fact, modern web in general. Certain interactions users now expect to happen quickly without page reload, and it helps a lot with UX. So when it comes to an e-commerce site on Shopify, the 2 main points of interaction are going to be our variant selection. So on these products, we don't actually have any variants, so that's fine. We can just click add to cart. But even when we're clicking add to cart, we're having to reload to get to a new page. And then here we can remove a line item from the cart, but then we're having to, send a request to the back end, reload the page in order to get the new information. There's also collection filtering, but collection filtering really depends on if you need it. So on a store like this, where we have how many products? If I go into my products section like this, we've got 10 products. So product filtering is not super important on a store like this. On stores where you have 100, 200 plus products, then yes, we might want to have very snappy product filtering options, a sidebar on the left here where we can select some attributes and it filters by those attributes. We can do some search on the page. Also, not to mention searching the store overall, if we had that function within our theme. We can do that with just Liquid, but there's also an API for that in Shopify that allows us to do that. So quite a few areas of the theme where we can introduce JavaScript functionality. But to finish off this build a theme from scratch video, I'm going to do the 2 main ones and the 2 ones we talk about in the Shopify JavaScript module over on Shopify Theme Development. Okay, so those are, as I mentioned before, variant switching and our cart functionality. Now I'm going to do the latter first, the cart functionality. Now in order to build in this functionality, I'm going to use some existing web components that I've coded up, but I'm going to share with you in this video. The reason why I'm not coding up these components from scratch is because it's the same functionality no matter what you do on Shopify. So with the cart example, if we go to the cart Ajax API reference, there's only a few actions we can take, and the code for triggering these doesn't really vary. So rather than having to reinvent the wheel every time, I've put this into some web components so we can just plug that into our theme and build our HTML on top of that. So to find these web components, you can find them on the official Shopify Theme Developer GitHub. Just go to repositories. This probably looks different to my view because I'm actually the owner of this repository, but you should be able to see it's a public repository, Shopify-JavaScript-components. And here we've got the cart.js file and the product-form.js file. Let's just start with cart.js for now. And as you can see here, I've got 2 web components. I've got the side cart and I've got side cart item. But let's actually have a closer look at this inside of VS Code. So I'm going to click this button to get the raw code, and then I'm going to hit save page as to save this directly to the assets folder of our Shopify theme. Okay. Before that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this cart functionality come out in a drawer. Drawer is the term for something that just pops out to the side in web development. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to create my own theme.js, and this file is going to be all of my JavaScript for the theme itself, apart from the ones that have been pre-built for cart here, the cart.js. and possibly the product form. I've already closed down the GitHub link, but the product-form.js file as well. Okay, so we need to include these in our theme.liquid. So let's go into the layout folder, find theme.liquid. There's a few ways we can bring this in. I'm going to do it like this. So that's the cart.js. And then after it, I'm going to put in the theme.js. Okay, deferring both of them. So now these web components, or whatever web components we put in these files, are going to be available to us within anywhere in the theme. And inside of theme.js, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for, actually, there's a JS component and there's a HTML component to this as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write this in a different file to start with so that GitHub Copilot can help us with it. I'm actually going to put this into a section. I'm going to call this sidebar.liquid, and then I'm going to ask Copilot here to generate me a sidebar drawer. I want it to be about 550 pixels wide, and the space next to it, when forgot to mention, I want it to come out from the right, and clicking the space next to it when open will close the drawer. Please use a web component for this. What else? That should be it. Okay, let's just see what it does with that. Okay, cool. All right, this is pretty hectic. I'm gonna try and simplify this. It tends to like to use shadow DOM, so I'm gonna say, please don't use shadow DOM, and I don't need a template. I can just insert the code without it. I just want the wrapper for my drawer. Let's see what it does with that. Okay. All right. Looks like it is simplifying it a little bit. Here we go. Okay. I'm liking this so far, except that it hasn't used a web component. Which is what I originally asked it to do. Okay, please still have it as a web component. I think it's gonna, just like before, if I have to misspelt web component, but if I have to ask it so many times, it's probably not going to do it properly. It's taking a long time here. This is not a good sign. Okay, what I'll do is I'll accept this code, and then I will. Oh, actually, it does have it as a web component. It's weird. Felt like it was showing up something else before. All right, so what I'm gonna do with this sidebar is, I haven't got a schema for it. Please generate a schema with only the name of the section. Doesn't really need any settings. Okay, yeah, that's it. And then what I'm gonna do is, I don't really wanna be able to insert it wherever I want, so I'm gonna manually insert it after the header myself right here, side cart, and then what did I call it? Type sidebar, I think I called it. Sidebar. Probably should have called it side cart in the code, but oh well, side cart. Okay, let's double check that it is bringing it across over here in our theme editor, or our online store editor, I should say. As you can see here, we've got the sidebar here, and there's a button for open sidebar. Okay, I don't really want a button, but let's just check the functionality here. Open sidebar. That's cool and all, but there's no animations. So let me go back to where is it? Sidebar. Please make this drawer animate in and out. Okay, has it finished? I think so. Let's have a look at the new code. Open sidebar. There we go. That's exactly what I want. Cool. All right. We don't want this button though, and it's generating elements and putting them in the sidebar. I guess that's okay. I would have done it a little bit differently, but obviously when you use AI, you get pretty opinionated code. I'm gonna have a look at the trigger here. So open sidebar, we've got this button with the ID of open sidebar button, which is down here. I don't want that. So what I'm gonna do is get rid of that code. I just want the web component, and I'm gonna get rid of this as well because we're gonna put this in the cart icon in the header. So we should have an open method here. Yep, okay, great. And we have our web component here. So I'm gonna go into my header section right here, head over to cart here, and instead of this right here, I'm going to put on click. Actually, I might not put it on that exactly. I might target this within the web component itself via its ID. So I'll say header cart icon. Then I'll go over to the sidebar. Where was it? Actually, I'll close down a lot of these again. It's getting a bit messy. Sidebar, let's see. And then I'll just put it in the constructor. So I'll say documents, get element by ID. What was it? I forgot the name. Let's go look it up again. Header cart icon is what I called it. All right, so header cart icon, add event listener for on click, and then I'll accept the code suggestion. Now, if I click this, it'll open the side drawer, but it'll also trigger the ahref. So we just need to put in the event object here and then event prevent default. So it prevents that default behavior. And so now if I click this button, if JavaScript is enabled and running in the browser, it will prevent it from going to the cart page and show the sidebar instead, okay? Now, I want the close button to be a bit different. Please make the close button an X and place in the top left-hand corner of the drawer. Hopefully it gets this. It's pretty specific, so should be able to figure this one out. Oh, it's taking a while. Okay. Except I'm just going to trust it without looking at the code. There we go. All right, it figured it out. So there you go, sidebar content. And for this sidebar, I'm going to replace this with, actually, let's use our translation settings. Why not? We already put them in. Cart.title, pipe T. And then we don't need, this is your sidebar drawer at all. There we go, your cart. So we've got a nice little drawer to put our cart in now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and put this in our theme.js, clean up this particular sidebar file. And because this is brought in at the layout level, we'll be able to use this code wherever. So this should still work. Okay, cool. All right, so let's go to a product page and let's actually reprogram this so when we click add to cart, it doesn't add to cart and then go to another page. It actually opens this and we can see our cart, okay? So where were we? We're back on the Insane Shoes page right here, and we've got our cart web components over here. So what I've done with this cart web component is, if we look over here, I have actually, so we can write our code in Liquid and in JavaScript at the same time and use that same template. I have set the code up to look for a template on the page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a snippet. And based on where this snippet sits, it's going to be generated via Liquid, which, as we've seen so far, generates on the page load. And then we're going to use slightly different code, but the same template, if you will, for the JavaScript template that we're going to render these side cart items, because the cart is going to be re-rendered at the JavaScript level. So this adds a bit of complexity and also adds more code because we've got to generate code at the JavaScript level and at the Liquid level. We got basically two programming languages that we're using here, but the way I'm going to do it is going to cut down on rewriting the template twice. And the way I'm going to do that, as I mentioned, is with a snippet. Okay, so we need to create a snippets file. I think I mentioned that I already created all of the folders available to us, but obviously not. We haven't done a snippets folder. And I'm going to call this side cart item. Now, the thing with snippets is that it can accept variable parameters, okay? So what I'm gonna do is, first of all, let's create our one with sort of placeholder content. Maybe I'll ask ChatGPT to do this. Please write me a good looking side cart item element with the custom name of, what was it called? In our cart.js, we defined it as, let's have a look. That's the side cart. Where's the definition for the side cart item? Here we go. Side cart item. Now we've lost it. Oh wait, no we haven't. Let's see if it figures out this pretty vague prompt. Please write me a good looking side cart item element. Okay. All right, maybe this is not so bad. Okay, I'm gonna accept that. And then what I'm gonna do is, it's got the dynamic code here from Liquid. Replace all Liquid code with placeholder content. I just wanna build the HTML first and the CSS, get that looking good, and then we can reconfigure it to work with Liquid and with JavaScript, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is we're not gonna leave it like this, but I'm gonna paste this in here. Actually, we're gonna have a div to hold multiple of these side cart elements. I'm gonna call this cart items, which I think relates to what I've called it in the web component. And then I'm gonna put in the snippet. So the way we put in the snippet is render side cart item, like this. And let's see how this works. Okay, yeah. I mean, there's a button there that looks kind of cool. We got this remove thing here. Okay, I'm gonna copy some, actually, ChatGPT was able to figure out these icons by itself. So let's see if it can do that. I'll say, replace the remove text with a trash can icon. Okay, so it can generate some SVG. That's pretty cool. Just gonna indent it there. Let's have a look now. Okay, it's there, but we can't see it. So let's see. Make the color of this SVG icon work with a white background. All right, let's see what it does. Head over to here. Nope. What's the problem? Is it a contrast problem? It says fill none. Oh, this is something that the AI gets wrong sometimes. It closes the SVG tag before the path is inside it. Weird. Okay, there we go. Not the nicest looking icon, but I'll take it. And what I'll do also is I will ask ChatGPT here to, let's just grab the whole file. Please put the remove button into a third column so that all the elements of the side cart item are in line. Okay, I'm gonna accept blindly and see what happens. Okay, it's put it into a third column here. All right, so we've got a broken image. We've got pretty ugly placeholder content here, but we're gonna replace this with our own dynamic content anyway. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm going to build the Liquid code, which will match what we have here. and then we need to apply that same template at the liquid level. So here you can see we clearly have insane shoes in the quantity of 1 and old school kicks in the quantity of 1 in our cart. So I want to put that in our side cart right here rather than this placeholder content. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a loop here for item in cart items, which you'll see is the same code we have on the cart page, but the difference is I'm writing it this time, not AI generating it. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the item. So item. And then here I'm going to put in a flag to say liquid equals true, okay? Now, you might be a bit confused as to why I'm passing in liquid is true, but this is so that we can replace the variables here if liquid is true with liquid variables. I don't want to do this if we're using it in the JavaScript template, okay? Again, this is hard to explain without seeing it, so once we see it, hopefully it'll make more sense. We'll just do if liquid, we will assign, actually, I might actually take these suggestions. Yeah, why not? Except for else. Let's see how well Copilot has figured this out. So let's see, key. So replace placeholder key with key. Replace placeholder URL with URL. Replace image src with image URL. Replace the placeholder title here in the alt with title. Okay, these are all variables that I've just set up here, by the way. This assign means I'm creating a variable and then I'm putting it in here. Why aren't I putting this directly inside the code is because we're gonna write an else here if we're doing JavaScript, and I've put in some of my own custom placeholders. Where is it? Up here, right? So we're gonna use these placeholders for JavaScript. Otherwise, we're gonna use the liquid code. But this right here is my solution in order to use the same template for both. So that's why I'm doing it this way. All right, so what was it for title? Title again here. Sorry, this part of the video is a little bit boring because I'm just changing these right here. I wonder if AI would be able to figure this out. Actually, let's just try it. Let's say replace all pieces of text, all strings, let's say, all strings starting with placeholder with the liquid variables I've set at the top of this file. Surely ChatGPT can figure that out. I feel like I've said that so many times during this video, surely it can figure it out. Most of the time it does, I guess. Let's say, please fix up the nesting. Is it gonna do it? Okay. So it's gonna fix some broken HTML so that the nesting is correct. Okay, cool. All right, so we've got none of that placeholder content anymore, and we've just got the variables that we've set up here. So I believe that should be enough. We're passing through the item, and we're using that item right here, and then we're putting it into our little template here. So let's have a look. If we open our cart, very nice. Okay, we've got the code here. We don't want the compare at price if it's the exact same price. So we just need to put in an extra bit of logic here. The logic will have to work in Liquid as well as JavaScript. So for now, I'm just gonna get rid of that, save us some time. So that, yeah, it just doesn't look right if you do it like that. And now we've got this weird issue. Our layout's suddenly broken again. I don't know why. Copilot wants to put the remove column at the bottom. Yeah, that doesn't really need to be. What is going on here? What code have they given me? Okay, this is a column, this is a column. And then if I just take this. Okay. And then that goes there. Okay, I think that's it. Let's fix up this nesting. Now let's have a look. Okay, much nicer. The only problem is we don't want default title. So I might put the logic up here. So title, where is it? Variant title, default, no, what we want to do is put if variant item.variant.title is not default title, because that's what the name of the default variant is called when the product is only single variant, then we will actually put that in the variant title field. Okay, so we've recreated what we have on the cart page into our side cart here, and this particular battery is going to die. So hold on a second, I'll just change the battery and we will continue with this right now. All right, so new camera battery, let's get back into it. So as you can see here, we've got our cart items, but this is not interactive. We can program in those functions, the same ones that we had on the cart page, but it doesn't really make sense because we are going to code this up using JavaScript so that it's more interactive and doesn't require us to reload the page. Okay, so basically what I've done is I've just made it so that the cart is pre-rendered on page load. So if we load up the theme and then we look over here, it's rendered at page load via Liquid, because Liquid is always rendered at page load. If we want something to come back after page load, we're going to need to use a JavaScript API, which is exactly what we're about to do. Okay, so like I said, I set up this web component here to replace certain placeholder content. I've created my own sort of little templating system here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to recycle what I've written here so that we can place it within a JavaScript template. So I'm going to put else here, and then we're going to assign all of the same attributes here. Okay, so we don't need any logic here because we can do our logic in JavaScript in the actual web component if need be. So for here, item key, I actually did not have that in my web component. That's something that just ChatGPT came up with. We don't really need it for the functionality, so I'm going to just remove it. URL we do need. So what did I have for that? I had image URL. And how this works is there needs to be a $sign on each side. This is just the templating system I set up. Actually, that's image URL, so that's going to go down here. URL itself, I didn't put in here. Again, I'm going to remove the ahrefs here. Hopefully that doesn't break anything. Obviously, each time you use AI, it generates a different result. So in my original example, the titles weren't linkable. So I'm going to go back to that. If you want them to be linkable, we would just need to update my code here in the cart.js. If you're comfortable doing that, feel free. But I'm just going to go with the ones I pre-set up. So I'm going to grab this right here. We need to make sure that we put it in a string. Item title, variant title, right here. Item variant title. $sign on the end. Final line price, item price. And if you're not sure why I'm doing this, it should hopefully become clearer quite soon, okay? Final line price, original line price. I believe that's what we were using before to get the compare at price. I don't want that, so I'll get rid of that, and then I'll refactor final line price. I'll just call that price. Rename all the instances where that comes in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to here and, or where am I doing this? Let's see, how have I set this up? So I'm looking for a template with the ID of side cart item within the side cart component. So let's do that. So inside here, I will do a, no, I won't do that. Leave me alone, ChatGPT. Okay, I'm trying to do a tab without doing the suggestion. Okay, can I do it this way? Yeah, okay. So now I'm going to render the same snippet inside this template for side cart item. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to write liquid false. Okay. Now if we look at our front end, so if I go over to, might need to fix that loading state issue. If I go and inspect the code over here and I go up to the template, we can see this document fragment up here, side cart item, image, and you can see that we have the JavaScript placeholder in here rather than the Liquid code, okay? So that's what I'm after. That should be loaded into the web component now, as long as my drawer is using this. I've got to make sure my drawer is using this as well. No, it's sidebar drawer. Okay, so we need to actually, I mistook this sidebar drawer for the side cart component. So we just need to nest a sidebar component within this sidebar drawer. Okay, and what else does the sidebar component need? Let's look at our web component here to figure it out. Closest sidebar drawer, let's just double check. Okay, so here it's sidebar drawer without the dash in between side and bar in this example. And then I think that might be it. So let's just see what happens now if we get the drawer being console logged. So I'm going to go over to console here, and you can see that the sidebar drawer is being console logged. And so let's test some of this functionality. Let's run, let's see, side cart item. Let's run get cart on this web component. So we're going to go document, query, selector, side cart, and then let's run get cart. All right, so we got our first error here, which is Shopify.formatMoney is not a function. I forgot to include a special piece of JavaScript. We can freely find it on the internet. It helps us with formatting money. So with Liquid, it's quite simple. As we saw before, we just pass things through the money filter like such. But it's a little bit more difficult in JavaScript. And so to help with that, there's a helper function that we can use. I've obviously got it in my cart.js, but we haven't imported it into our project just yet. If you just search for Shopify format money function or Shopify format money JS, something along the lines of that, you'll find this one right here. And somebody here, Stuart, I should say, he has pulled this from one of the themes that Shopify have built, I'm assuming. Not a lot of code here, but a lot more than we want to write ourselves when it's already been done. So I'm just going to save that to my assets folder right here. And then we're going to need to update our theme.liquid file right here. We put it before cart.js. I'm going to put Shopify-money. All right, cool. So with that inside our theme, I'm hoping that that will clear our issue, our JavaScript error. So let me open this up. That is our Liquid generated cart, but now let's run get cart. All right, so we're getting the right number of cart items. It's just not replacing the placeholder content correctly. And if I check over here on closer inspection, I'm actually writing the wrong variables here, the wrong templates here. This regex means that there's $2 on either side. So let me just fix that up now. All right, with that fixed up, now let's run get carts, and voila. We get the right placeholder content, although we don't have our quantities here. So let's see what the issue is here. Maybe we didn't place that in the element. Yeah, so we've got item quantity here. So we need to assign quantity equals item quantity. So we'll put this here, and then we're going to need to put our template variable for the JavaScript templating system here, which was item quantity. Okay, let's have a look again. So this is our Liquid generated cart right here, and then I'll run get cart to get our JavaScript generated cart, and there you go. Beautiful. Okay, now in order to get these to work, we need to make sure that we have the right information on them. Let's see, on the side cart item, we've got the actual variant ID and the item count. I believe that's all we need in order to get this to work. So let's have a try. Let's click on the trash can icon and voila, it deletes that item. Let's have a look if we can increase the quantity of a single item, which we can. Beautiful. Let's see if we can decrease the quantity of a certain item, which we can. Can we decrease it to 0? Yes, we can. And then we have no items in our cart. And this is totally in sync with the cart page as well, because it's the same object within Shopify. Okay. So obviously we just went from a completely unfunctioning cart to a functioning cart. And what gives us all that functionality? Well, the existing cart.js file that I uploaded. So yeah, if we didn't use this already created JavaScript, we'd obviously have to write it in this video, which probably would have added another half an hour to the video. So again, all of these functions are pretty standard. The cart Ajax API doesn't change. So we're just basically taking the variant and sending it to these different endpoints. That's something that you can plug into any theme. Okay. So let's have another look at this. If I add this product to the cart, you'll see that we're still going to the cart page. We're still adding the product in the liquid way on the back end, which is not great. And also, I think there's another error here. If we try to trash this product without running get cart, we get an error. So let me refresh over here and have a look at the side cart item. It appears that the variant ID is not coming through. That's our issue. So at the liquid level, we're not putting in the variant ID, so we just need to do that as well. So I'm going to say variant ID equals item variant ID, and then the item count as well, item quantity. And the reason why I'm putting this in as liquid and not as JavaScript is because we already have this information in our web component. And as you can see here, I'm taking that information off the item object here and putting it into those fields. So at the JavaScript level, it will be replaced anyway. Okay, so let me refresh over here, and the liquid generated cart, if I click trash here, it should work. Refresh the cart over here, it works. Okay, so yeah, that should all work now. And now we can take our attention to the product page, to the product form here. Okay, cool. So the first step, as we saw before, is we're going to want to be able to add that product to the cart and have the cart open here without having to go to the cart page. That interaction obviously is not ideal. Let me close down some of these right here, and let's bring up our main, not our main page section, but our main product section. Okay, cool. So we've got our form right here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this in a web component. So I'm going to do product-form, and I'm going to put the liquid form within this form. All right. Now we don't have a web component for this product form just yet. We can either take inspiration from, I already closed it down, but the Shopify JavaScript components has the product-form.js. So we can take this. This will work for if we're doing multiple option parameters, but I get the feeling this video is pretty long already and it's covered in the course. So what I'm gonna do is just take parts of this web component rather than the whole thing. So I'll look at the raw version of it, and actually let me just copy the, you know what? I'll just download it and then I'll remove certain parts of it. So I'll put it in here, and then I will include that in our theme.liquid. Instead of cart.js here, I'll say product-form. And then what I'll do is I will remove variant from option values and set selected options from variant. This is if we have multiple option parameters. The code is right here. I'll leave it for you guys if you want to use it on your own projects, but I want to wrap this video up pretty soon. So we're only going to support single option parameter variants in this particular build from scratch video. So let's see. So we've got our product form here. We're going to grab the current variant ID off of the variant ID attribute. So we need to add these to our component. I'm going to split this right, close down the Explorer, open it up here, and let's make sure we've got the right attributes in here. So variant ID, we're going to put here, and I'm going to put in product selected or first available variant.id. Same one as here. We did that before. And then also, what else? The product handle, we're going to pull off the product handle attribute. So I'm going to put a product handle attributes here as well, which is simply going to be product.handle from Liquid. We don't have to worry about JavaScript loading here because the product form is going to load on page load in Liquid, and it's fine. Then we can write our interactions after that. There's not actually going to be new elements being generated by JavaScript like in the cart. We need to make sure that our add to cart button lines up to this one. So as you can see here, it's add to cart -btn. We want this to be just add to cart. That might mess up the styling, so let's just have a look. Okay, no, really hasn't messed up the styling, so that's good. And then we need to make sure there's a form within our product form web component, which there is. And then we need to add the product-variants-JSON. So as I write here, make sure to include a script tag with the ID of product variants JSON in your HTML that contains the variants data in JSON format. So there's an easy way for us to do this. We can pass in, I'm gonna do a script tag, type application JSON. That's not the code we're looking for, but I liked the first part of the suggestion from Copilot. And then we need to add in that ID because that's what we're looking for in our constructor here. And then I'm going to simply put product followed by the JSON filter. And that gives us all of the, actually, I think I need to put variants in here first. And that'll give us a JSON array of all the variants, which we're then going to bring into the web component, parse it, and then store it in this variants array within the web component. Current variant, we're just going to grab from matching the current variant ID here to the array of variants that we've stored here. So just to show you that right now, I know this is a lot, but we go into a lot more detail into it in the Shopify JavaScript module within the course. So if you actually want to learn this properly, definitely check that out. And so if I look for the form here, where is it? Okay, product form. Inside we've got that script tag, and inside here you can see, doesn't look so nice because it's all bunched up, but we have the JSON here. And if I try and console log that, which I'll do right now, just at the end of the constructor here, if I try and console log the JSON parse version of that, you'll see it already showed up here. You can see we've got our array of variants that we've pulled from Liquid and basically imported it into JavaScript. All right, so we now have that information. And in fact, from the page load, from the get-go, we have also our current variant. So we can grab all of the information about our current variant on page load via the JSON. So here you can see we have our current variant. There's only one variant, so it's always going to be, well, for this particular product, so it's always going to be this. And then what we're doing here also, there should be an event listener. If I look at this web component, we're looking for the submit event on the form. Actually, we're looking on the web component, but it should bubble up. And then we're going to handle the form submit. So let's have a look at the form submit here. It has event prevent default at the top. That's very important because it's going to prevent that default functionality of submitting to the backend and changing the page to the cart page. And then we're parsing the form, and then we're using the cart Ajax API instead to post that variant ID. And then once we get back a positive response, we're running on the side cart add line item, which if we look at the side cart components, add line item, takes the returns line item from the API and does a whole bunch of stuff. Let's not bog you down in a whole bunch of theory. Let's actually see how this works before I lose you by talking too much technical jargon. Okay, so now if I click add to cart, let's see what happens. Amazing. I was expecting maybe there'd be some errors, but no, it actually works, which is good. So now we have all our operations that we previously programmed or brought in from the cart.js file for updating our cart. And we can also add an item from the cart page directly to the side cart without having to do a form submission to the backend. Okay. This is all happening, to be clear, using the cart Ajax API, which is an API that Shopify provides in order to allow us to do this. So if it wasn't for the Shopify Ajax API, we wouldn't be able to do this. As you can see here, I'm making all these requests. So just have a look at that while I click this. You can see add, it's successful. We're sending through this as the payload and we're getting back some information. So this is what allows us to do cart operations without having to leave the page. Okay. So that's great. That works for a single variant product. But what about a multiple variant product? All right, let's go to, what was the handle? I don't quite remember. Sexy Lamai flats for women. So this is our product on our store with variants. Okay. Now, if we have a multiple variant product with the current setup, what's going to happen if we click add to cart? So what happens is the blue variant gets added to the cart. Why is that? Well, if we look over here, it is the first in the list. So if we don't program it otherwise, if we don't give the user the option to change their selection, it's going to add in the first or selected. Now, what do I mean by selected? Well, we talked about it a little earlier in the video, but I can actually specify the variant as I've got up here via a query parameter. So I'm not sure which one this one is. Looks like it's the blue one, but let's see what other things I have stored in my history. Looks like we're getting back the same one. And you know why that is? We haven't actually updated our main product to use, it's still using featured image. So we want to actually pull the image from the actual variant. So I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to have it default to featured image. I think I can chain this. So I'm going to do product dot selected or first available variant image. And then let's see if I can do this. I don't know if I've tried this before, having a default filter and then putting it through the image filter. Okay, it works. So here you can see we're changing the variant ID and we're getting back a different image. Okay, so that's kind of proof that we're looking at a different variant. The price is not changing because they're all the same price, but let's just fabricate this. Let's make pink and blue different prices. I don't think there's any reason why different colored shoes would be different prices. In this instance, it doesn't really make sense, but other times it would. So here you can see when we select the pink variant, we have a different price and a different image. And then when we select on page load, the first or selected, well, there's no selected, but that object is going to give us back the first or selected variant. Right now, because there is no selected, we're getting the first. So it's going to give us the blue variant. Okay, so that's what's coming back on page load, but we also want that information to change once we change the variant. And we also want to give the user the option to change the variant because currently we don't have that functionality right now. Now, what we can do, which doesn't even require JavaScript, is we can simply bring in a select. So a select is what it's called in HTML, but most people know it as a dropdown. And instead of, actually, we want to put in a conditional here. So we can actually look at the product object, and there's a attribute here or a property called has only default variant. If it has only the default variant, then we just want to put in the hidden field for the ID. But otherwise, let's put in the drop down because we need to be able to select what variant. We don't just want to assume they want to add the blue. I mean, what's the point in having multiple variants if they can't change it? So we'll need to name this the exact same way with ID. That'll tell the backend that this is storing variants. And then what I'm going to do is run a loop. So for variant in product.variants and for, we'll put in an option. Let's just take the suggestion here. I think it's probably going to be pretty good here. So yeah, if the variant isn't available, it's going to disable it. It's going to put the ID as the value. And then I don't want the price, so I'm just going to remove that. But I do want the variant title, of course. And the other thing I want is on page load, if this is the variant that is selected, I want it to show. So there you go. GitHub Copilot is now suggesting that to me. So we're going to check if the variant in the loop that we're looking at, this actual option, if the ID matches the ID of the selected or first available variant, we're going to say that this is selected. So showing you that example again, this doesn't look great, but we now have all of our variants in here. And if I show you the page load thing again, you can see that not only do we have the price for the purple shoes, the image for the purple shoes, but we're pre-selecting that variant here as well. Okay, so that's a feature within Shopify. The selected variant at the liquid level is what we put in this query parameter. Now this is going to work without JavaScript. So if we just take away this product form completely, let me just comment it out completely right here. And I select pink and I click add to cart. This is backwards compatible. It's going to still work because we've got an element with the name of ID for the variant ID, and then we're sending that information through to the backend via the form action. Okay, but the problem with this is it's just not that sexy. It's not that user friendly. We can't see all options on page load. Some stores have it like this, but most stores, they have more of a pills functionality. Now, if there's multiple option parameters, then we need multiple groups of pills. But like I said, I don't want to overcomplicate this too much. And if you do want to learn more about how to program multi-option parameter variants, definitely check out the module. But for our purposes, I'm going to assume here that we only have a single option parameter. So instead of options here, I'm going to put in labels. And, I'll put in a span for the variant title. And then before it, I'll put in a radio, input type radio, name ID, value variant ID. Okay, this is pretty good. This is matching what I had in mind, but we just want this to not show because I'm going to style it a little bit differently. Actually, before I hide this, I'll just show you what this looks like on the front end. Do we still have the select there? Okay, we definitely don't want the select, something that we need to remove. And now you can see as I switch this, you see that the price is switching. That must be because I programmed that into the web component somewhere. Let's have a look here. Isn't it great when things work? So there is an event listener for input. This is going to be triggered and bubble up when something changes within the form. And then it's going to run update variant. Whoops, excuse me there. And then update variant is going to match the variant object based on the checked radio. So nice that this lined up, but it's not updating the product image. So we just need to make sure that this class is on the product image, which it is, interestingly, but it's actually on the parent element. So we just need to update this selector. Product price is changing. Is it updating the history state? It should be. So if we go back to that product, I think I see another issue here that we need to fix. Let's choose pink now, and you'll see here that the price and the image is changing now. And also up here, the variant ID, so that if we refresh our page or share that URL with someone else, it'll work, but it actually won't because there's a slash in there. So just need to fix that. I wonder why that's happening. Just remove that slash there. That wasn't an issue before. We just need to make sure that there's no slash there. Oh, actually, no, it's not the slash. It's the product handle is missing. Silly me. I've been at this all day, guys. I'm a little bit tired. Okay. So what's happening is when we're running update variants, we're missing the product handle. The product handle is coming from the attribute product handle. Let's have a look on here. So we've got some malformed code here. What have we done? Extra set of inverted commas there. Okay, refresh. Now, if I change the variant, it's going to change the price and the image. And it's also going to update the variant ID up in the URL. So now if I refresh, you'll see we get the pink information preloaded. So that's functioning. I could just leave it there, but no, I'm gonna make this look a bit nicer. I wonder if AI can help me do this. Nah, I'm worried that it's gonna mess it up. So what I'm gonna do is I'll do it myself. I will go in here, put style display none. And then I will create an active state here. So I'll label, I'll give a class to this label, variant option. And then I'll say within variant option, we're looking at the input. If it's checked plus span, then let's just go with that for now. That hasn't seemed to work. Okay, there we go. I don't particularly like that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a background color, just accepting some suggestions here. I don't want a border radius. I don't want margin between them. Let's put between each of these some flexing, display flex. That's it. Let's just try that. Refresh over here. Oh, I'm only putting the padding on the selected one. We want to change that so it doesn't require the attribute to be checked. And then I'll put a border of that, whatever that is. We can fix it later if it sucks. So here we can see we should be having all of these. Sorry, I'm rushing here and making some mistakes. So we want to wrap this in variant options, right? Close the tag, and then variant options is what I want to have flex on. Refresh over here, and then the add to cart button is going to be sitting not in the best position, so I want to give it display block instead, I think, and then give some margin on the top. Let's do that. So what is it? Add to cart. So I'll put that here. Add to cart. And I don't really like the blue color. Let's make it black. Whoops. Clicking around like a madman here. Okay. So yeah, I just want some margin after that as well. I'll put it in the actual product form, margin top 20, 15 probably. Product form, margin top 15. Cool. All right, so now we've got our little variant selector, single parameter, but works. A lot of stores actually don't have variants or have only single parameter variants. So this would work a lot of stores, but as soon as you add a second parameter, it multiplies the list of variants. So you need to be able to account for that. Again, that's in the course. So let's add a green to the cart. And like I said, guys, when we're adding an item to the cart, we're adding a variant. So each color of these shoes is a different line item, and you can see this clearly in the cart. And then I can click on checkout, and that'll take us to complete our order. All right, that's basically covers the list of things I wanted to cover in this video. I've been recording for quite a while, so this should be a pretty big video. Let's have a look at our finished product. Again, it's not going to be the sexiest store. It's not going to be a production level theme, but I think we've covered sort of most of the important bases within this video, at least. So here you can see our homepage, a reorderable list of sections like most of our templates in the theme. We can shop the OG range, which will take us to our collection page. We can also select it in the menu. There's a little bit of an issue there with loading of the cart. I'm going to fix that before we finish up, just to be clean. We've got search here, which we didn't really program in, but most importantly, we've got our side cart here. If I add, when it's taking a while to load, it becomes a real problem. So I'll fix that in just a sec before we wrap up. But if I click add to cart, we get that in there. We can edit our cart on the fly. Perfect. About us page, not super important, but it's there. I'm not sure why it's running so slow at the moment, but we definitely have a problem with our cart showing up while things are loading. So we need to make sure that this cart is not showing until the JavaScript is loaded. So let me just go over to our, let's go over to sidebar. How are we going to do this? So I would turn off JavaScript, but you can't actually turn off JavaScript while you're running CLI. So maybe we just need to ensure that the closed state is on here. Maybe I'll simply set it to display none until the connected callback is complete. So I'll just say this set attributes. Sorry, I won't do it like this. That's overkill. I'll do style display block. Oh, sorry, this is on product form, not on the cart component. Actually, do we want it on the cart component or the drawer? Let's go into our theme.js. Connected callback, we'll put it at the very end, this display block. And then on the sidebar itself, we have display none. Refresh the page over here. You can see that it doesn't come up until here. I think display block is going to work. Let's just have a look. If we didn't have that, what would it be? I'm sure it'd just be block. Display inline. Okay. So let's just fix that up. Display inline. Okay. So even on a slow connection, we don't have the cart loading prematurely. There's a few things we could fix with the loading, but once again, guys, that is, I think, a pretty good overview of the major parts of Shopify theme development. I hope you guys learned a lot from this video. I hope you guys have gained an understanding of Shopify theme development from this video. And if this is something that you're interested in, definitely check out shopifythemedeveloper.com. We have some free mini courses on there, so you can start your learning completely free. Like I said throughout this video, this is not a course. I'm not going deep into certain topics. If I did, this would be an even longer video, and I've got a feeling this is going to be a pretty long video already because I've spent all day here in the office. So thank you guys so much for watching. There's plenty more free videos here on this YouTube channel. If you want to stick around and watch some other videos, add them to your watch later list. And of course, shopifythemedeveloper.com if you want to be serious about learning this stuff. I'm also on Instagram at Shopify Theme Developer. So follow me there, send me a DM. If you have any questions about the course or anything we talked about today, you can DM me directly on that Instagram account. And so guys, that's it. Such a long video, I don't know how to sign off on this, but thanks for watching, and I'll see you somewhere on YouTube, somewhere within shopifythemedeveloper.com, or somewhere on Instagram. Happy coding, and I'll see you on the next one.